I have always been fascinated by crimes, not in a morbid way, or at least that's what I told myself to justify the hours wasted in front of the screen, but with the curiosity of an architect studying the plans of a collapsed building, looking for the point of failure in the main beam, the error in the calculation that turned a solid structure into a pile of rubble. I wanted to understand the fractured foundations of the human mind, the exact moment when an ordinary person, a neighbor, a coworker, someone who goes unnoticed in the crowd, becomes a monster capable of acts that defy all logic. I devoured true crime series as if they were oxygen. Making a Murderer on Netflix, with its legal twists that kept me awake until 3 a.m, questioning justice. Podcasts like Serial, where Sarah Koenig's voice dissected the Adnan Syed case with a precision that made me feel like an amateur detective. Crime novels by Stieg Larsson or Gillian Flynn, where the characters writhed in spirals of revenge and family secrets. Documentaries on YouTube about the Zodiac or the Rio Verde killer, pausing the video to jot down details in a worn notebook. The shoe print at the crime scene, the pattern of the letters sent to the press. For me, they were just stories. Safe stories contained on a 55-inch screen or in headphones that isolated the outside world, with a clear beginning, the crime that breaks the norm, and an end, often with justice, albeit belated and half-baked, served at the end like a bitter dessert. I was a tourist in the land of evil, with the comforting certainty that my visa was temporary, that I could turn off the TV or close the tab and return to my life as a freelance programmer in a modest apartment in downtown Seattle, where the code was predictable and bugs were fixed with a couple of lines. My sister Clara used to tease me about that. "You're a voyeur of darkness, Alex," she would say, ruffling my hair like she did when we were kids. "One day you're going to come across something you can't turn off." I would laugh, dismissing it as her typical overprotective older sister behavior. Clara, then 23, was the light in my gray life, a marine biology student with plans to work in aquariums or whale conservation, always with a smile that lit up the room, in a flowery dress that made everyone turn their heads. She lived an hour away in Olympia, but we saw each other every weekend sharing pizza and bad movies. She was my anchor, the reason why, despite my morbid fascination, I never completely lost myself in the darkness. That innocent, or perhaps naive obsession was what led me to venture into places where tourism is no longer possible, where stories have no script or editing. It was what led me to the deep web, not out of a sudden impulse of rebellion, but because of a loose thread in a true crime subreddit that I followed for months. The post was titled "The Hidden Confessionals." Where do the real monsters meet online? The anonymous user described forums on the darknet, accessible only with Tor and fake credentials, where real criminals, not the ghosts of documentaries, supposedly shared faceless truths. "It's not for the faint of heart," he warned. "There are no filters there. Only raw confessions." I responded with a skeptical comment. "Sounds like creepypasta." But curiosity, that insidious snake that coils in your stomach, whispered to me all week. What if the real stories, the ones without a script or narrator, are out there? What if the modern Zodiac writes his diary on a hidden server? I started cautiously. I downloaded the Tor browser onto an encrypted USB drive, created a disposable email address on Proton Mail with a fake name, ShadowReader87, and used a paid VPN that promised total anonymity. My first dive was on a Friday night, after a solitary beer on my couch, the apartment lit only by my laptop screen. The subreddit link led to an .onion site, a domain that loaded slowly, as if the server hesitated to reveal itself. The site was minimalist, black background, white text in Courier font, no ads or pop-ups. "Welcome to the abyss," read the header. "Here, you confess without judgment, observe without mercy. Rules, absolute anonymity, no questions, no judgments, only truth." At first, it was exactly what I expected. a well of digital noise. Most of the posts were clearly fictional, edgy fantasies of bored teenagers or frustrated adults looking to impress in absolute anonymity. I robbed a bank in Dallas and went to the Bahamas with $50K. The adrenaline is better than sex. I poisoned my boss with arsenic in his coffee. No one suspects the loyal assistant. Inflated nonsense, with comments from other users responding with skull emojis or good plot twist. Mixed in with that were delusional conspiracy theories. 5G causes mass cancer. The Illuminati control the weather. And a white noise of hate. Racist rants. Misogynistic rants. Everything that the superficial web filters out but floated freely here. I felt relieved, almost disappointed. It was all a game, a circus of lies for the entertainment of a few insomniacs. I browsed for an hour, taking notes in a text document. Post 47 false, details inconsistent with actual Dallas case. And closed my laptop, laughing at my own paranoia. Clara sent me a message that night. "Hey bro, still on your crime marathon? Don't stay up too late. Picnic at the lake tomorrow." I replied with a thumbs up emoji, but the knot in my stomach didn't completely disappear. I returned on Saturday morning, after a strong black coffee, justifying it as research for a podcast I might do. The forum had been updated with a dozen new posts, more fantasies. A thread on how to hack ATMs that was copy-pasted from a YouTube tutorial, but one caught my attention. The bridge ritual. The user described an assisted suicide at the Golden Gate Bridge, details such as the victim's car model, a 2012 Honda Civic, metallic blue, and the suicide note that mentioned the bridge as a portal. I quickly Googled it. It was a real case from 2 months ago, and the police had retained the car model to rule out imposters. My pulse quickened. Coincidence? Or had someone leaked inside information? I commented anonymously, "Interesting, source." No one responded, but the post sank down the list, replaced by more noise. The following week, curiosity became a habit. I logged into the forum every night after work, freelance coding for mobile apps during the day, digital darkness at night. I began to map patterns. 70% was garbage, but the remaining 30% had echoes of reality. One post about the box in the basement detailed a burial in the Nevada desert, mentioning a snake tattoo on the victim that didn't appear in the press. Another, the wrong package, described a drug robbery in Miami with exact GPS coordinates of the warehouse. I wrote everything down in a physical notebook, nothing digital, out of paranoia, cross-referencing with local news. Clara noticed my distraction during our weekly dinner. "Alex, you look like a zombie. Another series? Leave that alone, come to the lake this weekend." I promised her, but the forum had me hooked. A black hole that sucked up hours. A month after my first visit, the details that didn't add up multiplied. A user. Whisper 47 recounted the kidnapping of a girl in Ohio with a precision that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. Elmwood Street. The red 2008 Ford F-150 pickup truck with partial license plate 08456. The pink ribbon in the girl's hair that the mother mentioned in an interview, but that the police did not confirm. I searched. It was a 6-month-old open case, and the bow was a withheld detail. My stomach churned. Fiction inspired by real events. Or the perpetrator confessing in code. I didn't comment, but I saved the post, my heart pounding. Another, the collector, described the murder of an elderly couple in Florida. The theft of a 1923 commemorative gold coin, the husband's throat slit with an ivory letter opener. The police, according to an article he recalled, never revealed the stolen item to avoid false confessions. The knot of cold in my stomach tightened. What if it wasn't all fiction? What if this digital hole was a drain through which the darkest effluence of reality seeped, confessions that would never see the light of a courtroom or a padded cell? I started logging in earlier, the day's code forgotten, my laptop open on the bed while Clara sent me whale memes. "You're acting weird, Alex. Is everything okay?" I replied, "Yeah, just working." but my sleep was fragmented with dreams of endless forums, posts that opened like wounds. It was in the third week of the second month that I saw the thread. It was a Thursday night, rain pounding on my apartment window, the hum of the laptop fan the only sound. The forum loaded slowly, the server somewhere in Eastern Europe struggling with the connection. The title was dry, direct. No frills. My Angel in the Lake. I don't know why I clicked. Maybe because of the poetic and macabre contradiction, angel and lake evoking innocence, but the context of the forum screaming darkness. Perhaps because the user, Lake Warden 88, had only 3 previous posts, all about preserving natural beauty, a euphemism that now turns my stomach. The post loaded white text on black, dated 3.5 years ago, July 12th, 2022. The air was cut off in my lungs as if someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. The post was long, meticulously written in short paragraphs, with a tone that mixed sick poetry and clinical precision. It began by describing a summer day, a family picnic by Crystal Lake outside Olympia, Washington. It talked about a girl, a 19-year-old girl with honey-colored hair that fell in soft waves to her shoulders, and a laugh that, according to the author, sounded like glass bells tinkling in a gentle breeze. She wore a light blue dress, made of light cotton with small flowers embroidered on the hem, and a thin silver bracelet with a butterfly charm that caught the sunlight. My hands began to tremble on the keyboard, the cursor blinking like an erratic heartbeat. My sister Clara, my younger sister Clara Voss. She was 19 that summer of 2022. Her hair was that exact shade of honey, dyed with natural henna because chemicals kill the soul. And that dress, my mother had given it to her for her birthday in May, a whim from a vintage shop in Seattle, and Clara loved it, saying it made her feel like a lake nymph. The butterfly bracelet. It belonged to our grandmother, a communion gift that Clara had worn every day since she was 15. She wore it that day, July 12th, for the family picnic at Crystal Lake, our annual ritual, with checkered blankets, tuna sandwiches, and frisbee games on the shore. The lump in my throat tightened, a muffled sob rising in my chest. I kept reading, unable to stop, my eyes devouring the words as if they could rewrite reality. The author described how he had watched her from afar, sitting on a red and white checkered blanket, separated from her family by a moment of distraction, her parents arguing about the route home, her younger brother chasing a ball into the water. Clara stood up, stretching, and walked toward the shore, picking up smooth pebbles from the shallow water, her blue dress fluttering in the breeze. He spoke of her radiant innocence, of an ethereal beauty that cried out to be possessed, captured in its purest form, and then preserved for eternity. He used twisted, almost reverential language, like a poet describing a muse, but with a subtext that made my skin crawl. Her hazel eyes with golden flecks sparkled with the light of the lake, as if the water itself had blessed her. Hot tears rolled down my cheeks, splattering the keyboard. Clara had hazel eyes with golden flecks, a detail only our family knew about, because she joked that they were mermaid eyes. The post continued, how he approached her, pretending to be a local hiker, commenting on the weird shells at the bottom of the lake. Clara, a nature lover, trusting as always, smiled and replied, "Yes, my brother says there are fossils here." She followed him a few yards down a side trail, the dense forest closing in around them, and then the narrative plunged into the shadows, the tone shifting from sickly admiration to the meticulousness of a butcher recording his work. He detailed the clearing in the forest, a circle of tall pine trees where the sun filtered through in dappled rays, the ground covered with dry needles that crunched under his feet. He spoke of how he immobilized her, not with a brutal blow, but with a cloth soaked in chloroform that he pulled from his backpack, pressed gently against her mouth and nose as she struggled, her eyes widening in surprise. Her struggle was brief. Butterflies flutter against the cloth. Her eyes, those golden eyes, closed like petals at sunset. My breathing became short gasps. The room spinning. Clara hated chloroform. She had seen an old movie and swore it smelled like rotten pool cleaner. The post described how he dragged her to the center of the clearing, tying her to a tree with nylon ropes he had prepared, her hands behind her back, her ankles together. It wasn't to hurt her yet, just to prepare the canvas, he wrote. Then the cuts. They weren't to kill, just to decorate, to hear her music when she woke up. He specifically mentioned the pattern he made on her arms, concentric spirals, starting at the shoulder and working down to the wrist, with a sterilized scalpel he took from his first aid kit. The blade was thin, precise, like a pencil tracing a mandala on her pale skin. The blood spurted in red beads, not streams, and she screamed, a loud, pure sound like the song of a wounded bird. I called it her symphony of transformation. A moan escaped my throat, an animal sound I didn't know I could make. I staggered to my feet, the laptop falling to the floor with a thud, and ran to the bathroom, vomiting into the toilet until only bile came out. I was shaking uncontrollably, sweating and freezing at the same time, my knees buckling until I sat down on the cold tile floor. The text on the screen, illuminated in the darkness of my room from the floor, was no longer abstract words. They were blades, each sentence a slash across my soul. Clara's autopsy had revealed those spirals, a detail withheld by the police to filter out false confessions, and the sound of her scream. The coroner mentioned damage to the vocal cords due to extreme effort, but no one heard anything at the picnic. No one except him. I crawled back to the room, tears clouding my vision, and continued reading, compelled by a masochistic force that screamed, "Find out more, find something." He described how she woke up, her eyes widening in terror, struggling against the ropes that rubbed her wrists raw. Her pleas were poetry. "Please let me go. My family's looking for me." I replied that her family was the past, and I was her eternal future. He talked about breaking her fingers, one by one, starting with the little finger on her right hand, the one she used to write in her diary, a detail that only I knew because Clara showed me her entries about whales and dreams. Like dry twigs snapping underfoot, a clean crack that echoed in the clearing. She screamed again, a sound that made my skin crawl, but it was necessary, so she wouldn't write any more lies about a world that would abandon her. She was crying now, muffled sobs that made it hard for me to breathe, her body convulsing on the floor. Clara wrote in a blue-covered diary entries about her internship at the aquarium, about boys who ignored her, about me, and how my brother is the only one who understands me. The post continued, how he undressed her, not violently, but with reverence, folding the blue dress like a shroud, revealing her body pure, a temple ready for consecration. He detailed injections, a homemade sedative from his medical kit to keep her still while he worked. And then the final work. Cuts on her torso, a butterfly wing pattern that matched the charm on her bracelet. The blood flowed like wine in a sacred cup, staining the clearing floor dark red. Her breathing became shallow, a whisper, and her eyes, those golden eyes, dimmed like stars at dawn. And then came the photographs, attached to the post as encrypted files, downloadable only to verified members. I was one thanks to an anonymous Bitcoin payment I made in my second week. I clicked on the first one, my heart an anvil in my chest. My body convulsed again, a guttural scream escaping my throat as the image loaded. The first photo was of Clara, already unconscious or dead, leaning against a gnarled tree trunk, ropes cutting into her pale skin. Her eyes were open, empty like dry wells, the hazel irises with golden flecks fixed on a distant point. She wore the blue dress, now torn at the shoulder and stained with mud and dried blood, the embroidered flowers darkened by red. On her arms, the spirals were clearly visible, cut with horrifying precision, curved lines starting at the shoulder and running down to the wrist, the skin swollen and reddened around them. The second was a close-up of her face, taken from above. The camera tilted to capture the curve of her cheek. Someone had closed her eyelids with tape, but it had peeled away slightly, revealing a sliver of white. She looked as if she were asleep, were it not for the deathly pallor of her skin, the bruise blooming on her temple, and the small line of blood running from the corner of her mouth, dripping down her neck. The third was the bracelet, the silver butterfly bracelet, blood-stained chains, carefully placed on a flat rock in the clearing, as if it were an offering to a pagan god. The butterfly charm caught the filtered sunlight, its right wing stained red, and in the blurred background, the blue dress crumpled like a discarded rag. They were real, undeniably real, with the grainy resolution of a pocket camera taken in haste, but the details were sharp. The mole on her right collarbone, the appendicitis scar on her lower abdomen, the silver ring on her middle finger that I gave her for her 18th birthday. These were the images that my parents and I had tried to erase from our minds for 3 long, agonizing years, the ones the coroner described in a sterile, white room, but which we never saw. "For your own good," said the detective. They were the physical proof of our nightmare, now turned into a digital trophy for the enjoyment of a sadist. And who knows how many anonymous viewers in that virtual hell, commenting with skull emojis or "good job." "Warden." I slumped out of my chair and vomited on the wooden floor, the acid burning my throat as the laptop remained open, the screen glowing like an accusing eye. I was shaking uncontrollably, sweating cold under my t-shirt, my knees buckling until I sat on the floor, hugging my legs. The world I knew, the one of safe stories on television where the detective always solves the case before the credits roll, had shattered into a million jagged pieces. Evil was not a distant abstraction, a serial killer from the 1970s with a southern accent. He had a meticulous voice, an eye for detail that made his confession seem like a personal diary, and he had been in the same room as my sister while her life slipped away drop by drop. And now, years later, he was on my screen, mocking me, my family, the justice system that failed to protect her, with posts dating back to 3 days after her funeral. The rage came after the shock, a cold, absolute rage that dried my tears and lifted me off the floor like a spring. It wasn't blind anger, but calculated, the same curiosity that led me to the forum now turned into a weapon. I saved everything with trembling hands, screenshots of the entire thread, the text, the sparse comments from other users such as "beautiful preservation" or "accurate details," Planet 1-1, of the images. God, the images which I downloaded into a double password encrypted folder, vowing never to look at them again but knowing I would use them as evidence. I copied the onion URL, the masked IP address of the server, even the timestamp of the post. I saved everything to a physical USB drive, hidden in a locked drawer, and deleted my browser history, restarting Tor as if I could cleanse the poison from my system. The next day, Friday, my face gaunt and my eyes swollen from a sleepless night plagued by flashes, the blue dress, the bracelet, the spirals, I drove to the Olympia police station, the same one where my family had spent endless hours 3 years ago, smelling of stale coffee and contained despair. I asked to see Detective Miller, the one who led Clara's case, a man in his 50s, with gray hair at the temples and a loose tie that seemed part of his uniform. His secretary hesitated. "He's in a meeting," but I mentioned Clara Voss and Deep Web, and she let me in within 5 minutes. Miller looked at me from his messy desk, piles of yellow folders, and a framed family photo of his smiling daughter. "Mr. Voss. Alex, right? What brings you here after all this time?" His voice was deep, tired, as if he had seen too many open endings. I told him everything, my voice breaking at first but gaining strength with anger. My obsession with true crime, the subreddit, the forum on Tor, the thread, my angel in the lake. I took out the USB drive and plugged it into his laptop, opening the screenshots. His face, skeptical at first. The darknet is full of fake sun. Turned into a mask of grave concern when he saw the photos. He paled, his jaw tightening. This is new. These angles of the clearing. The tree with that bark mark. No one else had them. Only the killer, or someone with access to the file. He stood up, pacing around the small office, rubbing the back of his neck. The spirals on the arms. The bracelet as an offering. It's identical. We retained all of that. How the hell did it get here? He asked for the USB drive, copied the files to his secure system, and questioned me for an hour and a half. How I accessed the forum, if I had interacted with Lake Warden 88, if I noticed patterns in other posts. This could be him, or a copycat with leaked info, but the photos, Christ. He promised action. I'm passing this on to cybercrime. We'll trace the server. You, don't go back alone. If that user is the guy, he might notice. I felt a split second of relief, a ray of light in the tunnel. Finally, we had something concrete, a confession that wasn't barroom gossip, but a time-stamped digital file with forensic details. I shook Miller's hand as I left. Thanks, detective. For Clara. And drove back to Seattle with my stomach churning, calling my parents on Bluetooth. My mother cried on the phone. Alex, is it him? Do they have him? My father, his voice hoarse from smoking, said, "Come home this weekend, we'll talk." I promised, but the relief was short-lived. The forum called to me, a black magnet. The system moves with the sluggishness of a glacier, slow and bureaucratic, and my hope quickly froze. I called Miller on Monday. The cybercrime team is on it, but the Onion servers are a maze. It will take weeks. 2 weeks later, IP bounces through Russia and Ukraine, difficult to trace. 1 month. The user deleted their account. The post remains, but without new metadata. Each call was a blow. It's a complex matter, Mr. Voss. The deep web, international tracking requires warrants, cooperation. We're working with the FBI. Working became investigating, then low priority, because open cases like Clara's competed with ongoing kidnappings and mass shootings. I presented all of this at the police station, hoping it would be the end, the climax of the story where justice finally acts with a dramatic raid and clicking handcuffs. But I received no immediate response, just the usual. An updated case number, a form for victims of cybercrime that I filled out with trembling hands, and a brochure on how to protect yourself online. I went home, the cloned USB drive in my pocket like a useless talisman, and that night, unable to sleep, I reopened Tor. The forum was still there, the post, "My Angel in the Lake," buried on page 2, with 3 new comments. Classic Warden. Pause 1 for the details. The bracelet is a poetic touch. Gold photos, more angels. My rage boiled. I responded anonymously for the first time. Who are you? Why Clara? The post was deleted within minutes, my account suspended. The forum had detected me. Or perhaps Lake Warden 88 was watching. Frustration turned to obsession. I called Miller dozens of times in the following months, each call a ritual of disappointment. Minimal progress, Alex. The server is offline. We're working with Interpol, but they prioritize human trafficking. My family joined in. My mother sent weekly emails to congressmen. My father drove to Olympia to lobby in person. Clara's case, already cold, was nominally reopened, but the digital thread was a dead end. The ghost user, the server, evaporated. 8 months later, Miller called me. "I'm sorry, son." Filed as unverified confession, nothing more to do. I called dozens more times, the answer always the same variation. "It's a complex matter, sir. The deep web. Tracking is difficult. The servers are overseas. We're working with federal agencies." The working faded into silence, my messages to Miller going from weekly to monthly until his number changed and the new detective said, "Case closed in 2023. The user, Angelmaker, an alias that appeared in a similar post on another forum, which I tracked down with pirated software, never posted again. He vanished like smoke, his confession still there, I suppose, on some ghost server or hidden backup, a digital monument to his crime and the impunity that surrounds it. My sister is dead, her killer probably still walking among us, perhaps a nondescript neighbor in Olympia, an office worker in Seattle, a tourist at Crystal Lake who returns every summer, and me. I'm stuck in a limbo of pent-up rage and numb guilt. I have the most visceral evidence imaginable, photos that haunt me in my dreams, texts that I reread on sleepless nights until my eyes bleed, and it's as if I had shown a damp spot on the wall to a plumber who has no tools, or a treasure map to a pirate without a ship. Clara deserved justice, not a PDF file on a rusty USB stick. I don't watch crime series anymore. The fascination turned into a bleeding ulcer that takes away my appetite. I turned off the podcast halfway through the episode, deleted the library of detective novels from my Kindle. Now I know that behind every unsolved case there is not only an intriguing mystery, but a dark forum where perhaps, just maybe, the perpetrator is recounting their feat to an audience of strangers, laughing at the detectives with their loose ties, at the broken families who light candles on anniversaries, at a system that cannot, or will not, follow them to the depths where they hide, protected by layers of code and anonymity. The horror is no longer on the screen, in the next in line of the documentary. It is in the silence of the phone that does not ring with news, in the phrase, "it is under investigation," that sounds like an excuse, and in the knowledge that the most horrible and intimate confession of your life, your sister's scream, her stained blue dress, the bracelet as an offering, may be floating in the digital abyss forever unanswered, while the monster who wrote it breathes the same air as you, invisible and untouchable, planning his next angel. Let me begin with a warning. I won't deliver it with the sensationalist tone of a movie trailer, but with the cold, persistent weight of someone who has lived through the consequences, who still feels the phantom buzz of a camera in every lit room. Be careful what you share online, with the tedium that pushes you to explore forbidden digital corners, with the love that seems perfect but hides wires and lenses in the shadows. Be careful, because sometimes the nightmare does not come from an ethereal beyond, but from this tangible technological world, where your boredom on a Sunday can become the trigger for a spectacle you did not ask to star in. 6 months have passed, and I still sleep with the hallway light on at my parents' house, a dim beacon that keeps the silhouettes in the corners at bay. My old home, the cozy duplex on the outskirts of Fairfax, Virginia, where Mark and I cooked impromptu dinners and laughed until 2 in the morning, became the setting for a nightmare I haven't been able to shake. A stage where my life was broadcast live to an audience of anonymous monsters. It all started with profound boredom, one of those endless Sundays where time stretches like a rubber band about to snap, and the silence of the apartment becomes an oppressive companion that forces you to seek distractions at the edges of the familiar. My boyfriend, Mark, was away on a week-long business trip, an engineering conference in Atlanta, or so he said, with his suitcase full of ironed shirts and a quick kiss at the door before he left. I, Julie Harper, 29 years old, had exhausted all the series on Netflix. The Crown to the end. A marathon of Black Mirror that left me paranoid about technology, and the books on my nightstand. A Gillian Flynn thriller that I reread for the 3rd time, searching the pages for clues as if my life depended on it. The duplex, with its soft blue painted walls and leather sofa that creaked under my weight, seemed to have expanded in its emptiness, filling with a hollow echo with each of my steps. The click of my slippers on the hardwood floor, the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the ticking of the wall clock that Mark had hung in the living room. A gift from his mother that now seemed to mock the stillness. It was the 4th day of his absence, a Sunday in October with fine rain tapping on the windows like impatient fingers, and boredom had gotten the better of me. I lay down on the sofa with my laptop on my knees, the cursor blinking in the Google search bar like a mischievous invitation. Deep web real stories, I typed, my heart beating a little faster than normal, remembering a podcast I had heard weeks ago about the darknet, that hidden underworld where everything, drugs, weapons, secrets, was sold facelessly. I was no expert, far from it, just a 29-year-old accountant with a degree in literature who worked at a boring auditing firm, processing numbers that didn't matter, dreaming of writing a novel someday. I knew the basic warnings from Reddit forums. Don't browse without a robust VPN. Don't download unknown files. Don't, under any circumstances, interact with anonymous users. But the idea of delving into the underbelly of the internet, of seeing that supposedly wild and forbidden side that documentaries painted as a labyrinth of horrors, exerted a strange attraction, an itch on the back of my neck that I couldn't ignore. I'm just looking, I told myself, downloading the Tor browser from a verified link, installing a free VPN that promised total anonymity, a lie I would soon learn. The first attempt failed. Tor loaded slowly, the connection bouncing between servers in Germany and Japan, and the Don't Onion site I found in a thread on our darknet markets was a market for counterfeit goods that I closed in seconds, my stomach churning at the photos of stolen passports. Nonsense, I muttered, but the itch persisted. I tried another link, a forum called Echoes Underground, accessible only with a temporary invitation that I generated with a basic Python script I copied from GitHub. The page opened with a jet black background and white text in monospaced courier font, like a terminal from the 90s. Welcome to the Echo, the header read. Here, truths that the world ignores echo, observe, do not participate. The forum was a maze of threads. Discrete sales, with listings of crypto and fake documents. Shared shadows with anonymous accounts of petty theft. The Edge with conspiracy theories bordering on paranoia. I didn't find, as I had hoped in my thriller fantasy, any weapons or drug markets in plain sight. It was rather disappointing. Forums full of plain text and broken links. Sites with 1990s designs that looked like they had been abandoned by amateur hackers. It was a digital graveyard, dusty and boring, with posts from months ago without replies. I was about to close it all, feeling foolish for my own morbid curiosity, when, in a sub-forum called Resonances, I found a reference to something called The Great Reality. The description was vague, disturbing, written by a user named Observer Null. Observe real life, without filters or scripts. Interact with the cast if you dare. Temporary link, redacted. Entry, 0 or 2 BTC. Not for the faint of heart. My mind, educated by years of reality TV shows like Big Brother or Survivor, imagined something vulgar but harmless. Perhaps a site that broadcast from the homes of people desperate for fame, or a stream of boring lives for wealthy insomniacs. With comical skepticism masking the knot in my stomach, I generated a disposable Bitcoin wallet on my phone. A clumsy 15-minute process involving YouTube tutorials, transferred the minimum amount from my linked bank account, and clicked on the Onion link that Observer Null had PM'd to active members. The page loaded slowly, the buffer spinning like Russian roulette, the laptop fan humming louder in the silence of the duplex. When it opened, the background was jet black, no logos or banners, just a grid of 8 video windows like the interface of a low-budget CCTV system, but with a grainy, somber quality that made the images look like they were stolen from a fever dream. Below each window, a flashing red viewer counter, from 12 to 256, depending on the stream, and a text chat moving at breakneck speed, white lines on black, filled with abbreviations and sinister emojis, skulls, eyes. Thumbs up. I laughed to myself, a nervous sound that bounced off the empty walls. Sure, very real, I muttered, leaning toward the screen, the cursor hovering over the first window. The images showed banal, almost mundane domestic scenes. An empty kitchen with dirty dishes in the dish rack, and a wall clock reading 11:43 p.m. A living room, where a tabby cat passed by, jumping onto the sofa with a silent meow. A bedroom with an unmade bed, a table lamp on, casting long shadows on indie band posters. The chats were full of crude, grotesque comments, a stream of anonymous depravity. User 4K, the bitch from Stream 3 sleeps like an angel. I bet she wakes up screaming. User Ghost 9, I vote for lights off on Stream 7. I want to see what she does alone in the dark. People arguing about the characters, names like User 234 or The Lonely Loft, placing bets on what they would do next, as if they were spectators in a virtual coliseum. It all seemed like an elaborate setup to me. Actors paid to simulate boring lives in front of an audience of lonely perverts. A low-budget Big Brother financed by crypto. I hovered my mouse over the windows, zooming in on one. The one with the cat now licking itself on the sofa, looking for a flaw in the performance, a moving prop, a visible microphone, anything that would give away the charade and allow me to close my laptop with a laugh of relief. And then my heart stopped, a missed beat that left a void in my chest. My eye caught something in the lower right corner of the screen, the 8th window, with a counter of 47 viewers and a simple title, User 734, female, single. The image showed a bedroom, a multicolored patchwork quilt, hand-sewn by my grandmother from scraps of my grandfather's old shirts, spread out on the queen-size bed with crumpled white sheets. On the cherrywood nightstand, the same book I was reading that week, Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye, with the dust jacket slightly wrinkled in the upper right corner because I had dropped it last night. And on the edge of the frame, peeking out from the upper left corner of the window, right above the bedroom door, was the poster of the indie band The National that Mark and I had seen in concert at the 930 Club last month, with the date scribbled on the edge, Oct 15, DC. It was my bedroom, my bed, my book, my poster, and me, sitting at the desk in front of the window, my back to the invisible lens, my tiny oblivious figure on my own computer screen, typing away on Tor like an idiot. A high-pitched buzz filled my ears, drowning out the sound of the laptop fan and the distant patter of rain against the glass. The blood froze in my veins, a chill rising from my feet to the back of my neck, leaving my skin prickly as if 1,000 ants were marching across it. It couldn't be. It was impossible, a glitch, a virus that had infected my webcam. But no, the laptop camera had been covered with tape ever since I saw a video about hacking. I forced myself to breathe, inhaling deeply like in the yoga classes I had given up months ago, counting to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a coincidence, I whispered, my voice hoarse in the silence of the duplex. Someone else has the same blanket, the same book. But the poster, The National, Oct 15, that was unique. A bootleg that Mark bought at the concert exit, and we stuck up drunk that same night, laughing until we cried. I swiveled in my chair, the leather creaking under my weight, and scanned the room with feverish intensity, my eyes jumping from object to object like a faulty radar. The floor lamp in the corner, with its beige fabric shade, the bookshelves next to the bed, filled with mystery novels and gardening guides. The ventilation grill on the wall, dusty and harmless. The white smoke detector mounted on the ceiling, right in the corner above the door, its little green LED light flashing every 30 seconds like a mechanical eye. The landlord had installed it a year ago, after a false alarm with the toaster that burned a piece of bread and filled the duplex with black smoke. I had always considered it part of the furniture, an invisible object that beeped during monthly tests and nothing more. Now, its round, discrete shape seemed to flash with sinister malice, the green light winking as if it knew my secret. Panic was a slab of ice on my chest, compressing lungs that couldn't expand. Someone was in my house, or had been, months ago, installing a camera in the detector, easy, discreet, with long battery life and wireless transmission. Or worse, in the security system that Mark insisted on installing 6 months ago after a burglary in the neighborhood. Cameras at the front door, back door, and one in the living room that we deactivated for privacy. But the bedroom, how? My mind was racing in circles. Mark. No, he was paranoid about privacy, always covering the laptop camera. The landlord, ridiculous. A burglar who came back for fun. Cold sweat drenched my back, my t-shirt sticking to my skin, and I got up unsteadily, my legs like jelly, to inspect the detector. I climbed onto a chair, my balance precarious, and touched the plastic casing. Cold, solid, no loose screws. But the eye, that green light, stared back at me, accusingly. My attention returned to the computer screen, to the chat that ran frantically under my bedroom window. White lines on black multiplying like bacteria. The users didn't use real names, just alphanumeric codes like in a sick role-playing game. User XB12, 7A9F, Gear ST. The messages followed one another in real time, a stream of anonymous depravity that made my stomach churn. User XB12, the bitch is restless. She's caught on. Look how she's turning her head. User 7A9F, the action begins. I bet she's going to check the detector. I vote for panic level 10. User GA is T. Boring. We need more excitement. Where's the host? Have him start a poll. I want to see tears. Host. The word echoed in my skull like a hammer, a reality TV term that now sounded sinister, like a puppeteer manipulating invisible strings. Someone was controlling this. Someone who wasn't just spying on my life, my unmade bed, the book open on page 147, the phone charger tangled on the floor, but was also directing the show, responding to the whims of an audience of sadists who voted as if it were a mobile game. Suddenly, at the top of my bedroom window, a poll appeared in a flashing red text box, the vote counter resetting to 0. Poll active, user 734, female, single, age 29. What should the host do? Voting closes in 60 seconds. The options were listed below, a descending ladder of horror that made my breath catch in my throat, each one worse than the last, escalating from intrusion to annihilation. Disturb her. Sound the smoke detector alarm for initial panic. Harass her. Call her phone with a private number. Whisper her name. Knock on her door. Leave an anonymous gift, a printed photo of her bedroom. Enter her home while she is in her room. Silent movement. Hit her. Incapacitate her with a non-lethal blow from the shadows. Torture her. Basic interrogation. Questions about her life recorded. Kill her. Clean elimination for an epic season finale. A scream caught in my throat, a strangled sound that came out like a muffled moan. This wasn't a bad joke, a teenage hacking prank. It was a rat trap, a virtual coliseum where I was the rat, and the audience, those anonymous codes with black avatars, decided the next torment. The vote counters began to move in real time, the chat exploding in a frenzy. I vote to go in. I want to see her face. Hit her first. Make her run. Murder to finish her off for $100. Tease her and harass her. Received a few timid votes. Knock on her door. Rose quickly. Enter her house was already leading with 23. Hit her with 18. I watched in horror as one user, Gear ST, voted for kill her with a comment. Dramatic ending. The audience deserves it. 60 seconds. My life, my heavy breathing, my growing panic, was being decided in a digital poll as if it were a meme on Twitter. Rationalism vanished, replaced by an animal instinct for survival that sprang me from my chair like a jack-in-the-box. I had to get out of there, now, but to leave the bedroom, I would have to cross right through the camera's field of vision. That invisible lens on the detector capturing every step, every look of terror for the spectators who were betting as if in a casino. I was trapped in my own room, performing my own ordeal for an audience of sadists who commented live, "Look, she's sweating. I vote for torture. I want to hear her beg." I grabbed my cell phone with hands so shaky I almost dropped it on the floor, my fingers slipping on the smooth casing. I dialed Mark's number first, my thumb pressing hard, but it went straight to voicemail. His cheerful recording. "Hey, it's Mark. Leave me a message." "Honey, please call me right now. Something terrible's happening at home. There's a camera. People voting to hurt me. I'm scared. Come back now." I hung up. The message sent beep a hollow echo and dialed 911 immediately, my heart a fist in my chest. The operator answered in her professional, calm voice. "Emergency services. What's the problem?" "Someone's in my house. They're watching me through a camera. There's an online poll to hurt me. They're voting to break in or beat me up. My address is 142 Oakwood Lane, Fairfax, Duplex B. Please send someone now," I stammered, my voice breaking into sobs, while the operator tried to calm me down. "Miss, breathe. Can you see the person? Are the doors open?" But my eyes were glued to the laptop screen, the poll closing in 20 seconds. Enter her house, leading with 41 votes. Hit her, tied with 39. The chat a whirlwind. Go in now, make her run. Torture first, more views. I hung up the phone. The police are on their way, stay on the line. Because I couldn't wait any longer. Time was a luxury I didn't have. I ran to the bedroom door, the cold knob under my sweaty palm, and threw it open, the hinge creaking like a warning. The hallway stretched out dark, the light from the living room filtering faintly from the stairs below, and I heard a noise, a dull metallic thud coming from the living room, the unmistakable sound of the front door lock being forced with a lockpick, the latch giving way with a treacherous click. I didn't stop to look back at the camera capturing my escape for the spectators cheering in the chat. "Run, 734, make it exciting." I took the stairs, 2 at a time, my heart pounding so hard it vibrated in my temples, my socked feet slipping on the polished wooden steps. The living room was in darkness, the floor lamp turned off, the curtains drawn against the rain, and from the front door, now open a crack of 3 centimeters, came a gust of cold air that smelled of damp earth and something metallic, like machine oil. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, creaking the floorboards of the living room with a steady rhythm. Not the furtive tread of a nervous thief, but the confident walk of someone who was in complete control, who knew I was cornered like an animal in a trap. The kitchen was at the back, behind the living room, a sliding glass door leading to the backyard. My exit, if I made it. I ran across the living room, a fleeting silhouette in the darkness, the sofa grazing my hip, the coffee table with its magazines flying to the floor in my clumsy wake. I entered the kitchen, locking the sliding glass door with trembling hands. The latch clicked with a sound like a gunshot in the silence, and crouched behind the central island, the cold granite against my back, panting as if I had run a marathon. From my hiding place, I could see the screen of my cell phone, which I had left on the counter in my haste, now lit up, vibrating with an ignored incoming call from Mark. But worse, the security system app, which Mark had installed 6 months ago, insisting "for your safety, Julie," was flashing with a notification. Movement detected in main living room. A horrible thought, colder than the wind seeping through the crack in the front door, crept into my fractured mind. The security system. Mark and I had installed it ourselves after a burglary in the neighboring neighborhood. Cameras at the front door with night vision, at the back with a motion sensor, and one in the living room pointing at the staircase, which we manually deactivated when we were home for privacy, because no one needs to see our intimate life. Mark always took care of the app on his phone, updating it with passwords he changed monthly, saying, "It's just in case, love." But the fourth camera, the one in the bedroom, I didn't remember it. Not in the plans we reviewed together that night of installation, laughing over cold pizza while the technician drilled holes in the walls. With an uncontrollable tremor that made my teeth chatter, I crawled a few inches across the cold linoleum, ignoring the pain in my knees, and grabbed the phone from the floor. The screen lit up, Mark's call going to voicemail for the second time. I opened the security app with clumsy thumbs. Password, Fairfax 2023, which Mark gave me for emergencies. The interface opened with a low beep, displaying the 4 cameras in a grid, main inactive, rear inactive, living room active, and there, live, the dark silhouette moving through the living room, measured steps toward the kitchen. And below, A fifth camera, which I didn't remember existed, also active, labeled Master Bedroom, Private. Its feed showed my empty chair in front of the laptop, the screen still open on Tor, the cursor blinking innocently. It was as if the ground gave way beneath my feet, an abyss opening up in the kitchen floor. It wasn't just the smoke detector, a cheap hack. It was the entire system, the one Mark controlled from his phone, the one he religiously updated every Sunday morning while I slept. The host was not a stranger who had broken into my duplex that night. He had been living with me for months, maybe a year, sharing my bed with hidden cameras in the walls, whispering, "I love you," while recording every moan, every conversation, every moment of vulnerability for an audience that bet on my suffering. Our love, the dinners, the kisses. It had all been a sham, a script written for views and Bitcoin donations. A wave of nausea washed over me, sharp and burning, and I vomited again on the linoleum, the sound muffled by the hum of the refrigerator. The world became liquid and grotesque, the kitchen walls closing in like a trap. Footsteps approached the kitchen door, stopping on the other side of the frosted glass. The tall, thin silhouette projected in the dim moonlight filtered through the clouds. I could feel his presence, an evil pressure on the other side of the wood, the knob turning slowly with a metallic click that echoed in my skull. Then his voice sounded. Mark's voice, sweet and familiar as morning coffee, but now tinged with a terrifying calm, digitized and slightly distorted, came from the security system intercom built into the kitchen wall, the one we used for music or reminders. But now it was transmitting his low, controlled laughter. "Hello, Julie," he said, and the sound of my name on his lips. That name he whispered in my ear in the dark made me shudder to my bones, a chill that gave me goosebumps. "I see you've joined the audience. The numbers have risen sharply tonight, from 47 to 189 viewers in the last 2 minutes. They're very excited about you, love. Your panic is authentic. They voted for enter, and here I am." I couldn't respond, my throat closed by a knot of bile and terror, only a muffled whimper escaping my lips as I curled further behind the island, knees to my chest, nails digging into my palms until they bled. The knob turned again, the sliding door resisting the latch, but he didn't force it. Not yet. Just laughed. The sound amplified by the intercom like an echo in a cave. The poll was a resounding success. His voice continued calm and didactic, as if explaining how a new appliance works in a Costco demo. Enter her home won by an overwhelming margin, 52%, followed by hit her with 28%. But honey, I was already inside. I always have been. It's just that now they can see the game too. Vote on the next act. See the chat? They're crazy about you. Make her beg. Show us the bedroom up close. We're getting donations in Bitcoin, 0.5 already, and rising. You're a star, Julie. The game. My life, my heavy breathing, my silent crying, the vomit cooling on the floor was a game to him. A lo-fi reality show funded by crypto and depravity, where every vote was $1, every scream a like. Our love, the candlelit dinners, the stolen kisses on the couch. It had all been a script, a setup for this climax, with hidden cameras in the detector, in the security system he controlled, maybe in the wall clock or the lamp in the living room. Fresh tears rolled down my cheeks, salty and hot, while the chat on the laptop screen, visible from my hiding place, exploded. Show her, I vote for torture. Make her run into the garden, more drama. Then I heard the sirens, distant but approaching, a howl that cut through the rain like a knife. A glimmer of hope, faint and fragile as a spider's web, lit up in my chest. The police, my call to 911 salvation. But his voice on the intercom laughed again, low and pleased. Ah, the reinforcements. Too late for this round, but just in time for the twist. You know what, Julie? The audience loves open endings. They voted for enter, but I vote for escape. Run, baby. Make it interesting. I'll see you next season, or in the garden if the cops catch me. The knob turned sharply, the latch giving way with a metallic snap that echoed through the kitchen like a gunshot. The sliding door flew open, the cold, damp wind whipping the curtains, bringing the smell of wet earth and rotting leaves from the garden. I didn't stay to see his face, that face I kissed a week ago. That said, "I love you," to me in the shower this morning. It was the host's mask now, the director of my ordeal, with a heart-wrenching scream that tore through the night. "No!" I jumped up, knocking over a chair that fell with a crash, and ran toward the open sliding door, the icy air hitting my face like a punch. I pushed the curtains aside, the rods clattering, and shot out into the backyard, barefoot on the soggy grass that stuck to my feet like cold mud. The rain lashed my face, blinding me for a second, but I didn't stop. I ran toward the wooden fence that separated my property from that of my neighbor, Mr. Hargrove, a retired widower who always left his porch lights on. The sirens were louder now, on my street, red and blue lights flashing in the distance like a beacon in the storm. I climbed the fence, my fingernails breaking against the splintered wood, my legs scraping against the boards, and fell on the other side onto the soft earth of Hargrove's yard, the impact knocking the wind out of my lungs. I limped to his front door, the porch lit by a flickering yellow light bulb, and began pounding with my fists, the wood vibrating beneath my knuckles. "Mr. Hargrove, help, call the police." My voice came out hoarse, broken by sobs, rainwater mixing with tears on my face. The lights came on inside, a warm glow against the night, and heavy footsteps approached. When Mr. Hargrove opened the door, a man in his 70s, wearing a plaid robe and sleepy eyes, I collapsed into his doorway, sobbing uncontrollably, pointing toward my house with a trembling finger. "Someone broke in. My boyfriend, he's killing me. Camera vows, please." Hargrove, confused but acting quickly, pulled me inside and locked the door. "Calm down, girl. Sit down. I'll call 911. He left me on his faded floral sofa, a blanket over my shoulders, while he talked on the phone in the kitchen. "Yes, officer, my neighbor is hysterical. She says someone broke into her house. Yes, duplex B, Oakwood. Hurry." Sirens roared outside, vehicles screeching to a halt, doors opening, and boots on the porch. The police arrived minutes later, 4 uniformed officers with flashlights and crackling radios, bursting into my duplex with their guns drawn. Hargrove wrapped me in her robe. "Here, you're soaked." And I waited in her living room, trembling, while they searched. 10 eternal minutes, the wall clock ticking like an executioner. Then a young officer with a badge that read Rodriguez entered, his face serious. "Miss Harper, the house is empty. There are no signs of intrusion. The front door was locked, no forced entry. Are you sure you heard something?" "The door, it opened, and the voice." "Mark," I stammered, getting up, but Rodriguez raised a calm hand. "Your boyfriend, Mark Ellis, is in Atlanta according to his flight, confirmed by the airline. There are no active cameras in the security system, manually deactivated. The smoke detector is standard, no modifications. Did you see anyone?" I told them everything in their living room, my voice breaking into sobs. The deep web, the forum, the cameras, the survey, Mark's voice on the intercom. I showed them the laptop, tore closed, but screenshots I took in a panic before fleeing. They looked at me with a mixture of pity and professional skepticism, the sergeant taking notes in a crumpled notebook. "Miss, what you're describing is intense, but the darknet is full of scams, viruses that hack webcams or generate deepfakes. The intercom could be an app glitch. We'll check the system, but preliminarily, there's no evidence of intrusion." Disbelief choked me. "What about the poll? They were voting to kill me." The sergeant sighed. "It could be an extreme roleplay site. Send the screenshots to cybercrime, but without a verified physical threat, it's low priority." They gave me a card. "Call if you see anything real." And left, blue lights fading in the rain, immediately after the police left, leaving me alone on Hargrove's couch, With a logical explanation for my stress-induced hysteria, I ran back to my duplex, barefoot and soaked, mud sticking to my feet. I disconnected all the cameras from the security system, literally ripping them from the walls with a screwdriver from the kitchen drawer. The living room, the back, the bedroom detector that I threw to the floor with a thud that splintered the plastic casing. I put all my devices in airplane mode, terrified that he or his audience could see me through any lens. The phone, the laptop, even the microwave with its digital clock. I deleted the security app, the tour history, any trace, but the fear lingered, a buzzing on my skin. I called my parents that night, my voice shaking. I need to come home. Something bad happened. My mother, concerned, said, "Come right away, honey." I packed a suitcase that same hour, clothes, books, the cat in its carrier meowing in confusion, and drove the 4 hours to their house in Roanoke, Virginia, the rain turning I-66 into a black river. I arrived at dawn, collapsing into my childhood bed, the hallway light on like a talisman against the shadows. I've been living here for 6 months now, in my parents' house with its cracked plaster walls and the smell of my mother's lavender. And I have no intention of returning to that duplex. Mark called the next day from Atlanta, his voice worried on the answering machine. "Julie, the police contacted me. What happened? Are you okay? I'm coming back on the first flight." I didn't answer. I blocked his number, all his social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, even the work email we shared for invoices. I haven't spoken to him since, nor seen his face in the news reports I obsessively searched for in the first few weeks. Nothing. Just a clean profile of a software engineer with a history of frequent travel. Sometimes, in the silence of the night in Roanoke, when the wind whispers through the oak trees in the garden and the nearby lake laps at the shore like an unspoken secret, I wonder if I really imagined it all. The forum, the survey, the voice. If the boredom and loneliness of that week with Mark away created a vivid hallucination, a mental deepfake fueled by podcasts and wine alone. But then I remember the tone of his voice through the intercom, the terrifying calm that was not that of my loving boyfriend, but that of a director satisfied with his script. I remembered the red glow of the poll on the screen, the votes rising like a betting counter in an online casino. I remember the click of the front door giving way, the footsteps in the living room that were not paranoia but real footsteps. He's out there somewhere. Maybe in Atlanta, pretending to be concerned. Maybe back at the duplex checking empty feeds. And so is his audience, those anonymous codes with their Bitcoin donations and sadistic comments, waiting for the next stream. Because for them, this isn't a terrifying memory that haunts me in weekly therapy with Dr. Ellis. Process the trauma, Julie. It's a hack, not your fault. It's just entertainment on pause, a hiatus in the season. And the host, Mark, with his easy smile and whispered "I love yous," always comes back to give his audience what they want. More drama, more panic, more votes. And I, user 734, run in circles, waiting for the next ring, the next click, knowing that the game never really ends. My name is Alan, and until 3 months ago, I believed that fear was a simple emotion. Something that arose when you saw a shadow where there shouldn't be one, or when you heard a noise in the night. Now I know that true fear has no form, nor does it need darkness to exist. It lives in the cold light of a screen, hides in the bits and bytes of information we believe to be private, and waits for you, patiently, in the most mundane corners of the internet. My nightmare didn't start with a ghost, but with a personality test. I've always been a curious person, with an unhealthy fascination for forbidden places. In my case, it wasn't abandoned castles, but the digital realm hidden beneath the surface, the deep web. I didn't browse it often, to be honest. I was more like a tourist, who occasionally ventured into a dangerous neighborhood, heart in my mouth just so I could say, I was there. I was drawn to the idea of that black market of information, secrets, and forums where people said things without filters. It was intellectual curiosity, or so I told myself, to justify the little chill I felt every time I opened the Tor browser. It all started on a Friday afternoon, exactly 4 months ago. I had finished a hellish week at the office, a gray cubicle in an office building in Chicago's Loop, where I spent my days coding software for a consulting firm that no one would remember. My boss, a bald guy named Hargrove, had saddled me with an extra project, a last-minute debug that left me exhausted. I arrived at my apartment in Wicker Park around 7, with a bag of Chinese takeout in my hand. The place was a mess. Dirty dishes in the sink, clothes strewn across the couch, and the smell of stale coffee hanging in the air. I turned on the TV out of habit, but there was nothing that interested me. A zombie series, a reality show with screaming chefs. I turned everything off and poured myself a whiskey neat, the first of several that night. I sat down at my computer, the old Dell I had built myself years ago with faded stickers on the case. The cursor blinked in the address bar. I hesitated for a second, but temptation won out. I opened Tor. The connection was established with that familiar hum, as if the rotor were breathing. I browsed the usual links, a forum on obscure cryptocurrencies, another on ethical hacks that bordered on illegal. Nothing new. Then, in a thread titled Life-Changing Challenges, someone mentioned a site. The Mirror, they called it. Answer 10 questions and see your true reflection, not for the faint of heart. The comments were few, but intense. It kept me up at night. Don't do it if you don't want to know. I smiled. Sounds like bullshit, I thought. But the link was there, pure.onion. I clicked. The page loaded slowly, as if it were measuring my pulse through the connection. Black background, white text. There were no logos, no cookies, no visible trackers. Just the title, The Mirror. Answer 10 questions and discover who you really are. Below, a short paragraph. Be honest. Be thorough. The mirror doesn't lie. One button. Begin. The rain began to beat against the window. Then, a constant drumming that isolated the outside world. I leaned back in my chair, the whiskey burning my throat. Why not? It was Saturday night. Just me and the neighbor's cat meowing in the hallway. I clicked. The first question appeared suddenly without introduction. 1. If you had to choose between saving a stranger or your childhood pet, which would you choose? Explain why, in detail. I stared at the screen. The cursor blinked impatiently. It wasn't the silly question I was expecting, like, which superhero are you? This got straight to the point. I thought of Buster, my golden retriever. I had had him since he was a gangly puppy, a gift from my parents after my younger sister died in a car accident when I was 8. Buster had been my shadow, silently licking my tears, sleeping at the foot of my bed on those nights when the emptiness of the house suffocated me. The stranger. Who was he? An abstract. A nobody. I wrote, I would choose Buster. Not because I'm selfish, but because he saved me first. The stranger might have family, friends, a life worth living, but Buster was my family. I saw him die of cancer at 14, and that hypothetical choice hurts because I know I would make it real. I sent it. The page refreshed without sound, just a slight flash. 2. Describe the most embarrassing moment of your life. Don't edit it. Include dialogue, if you remember it. The whiskey had already loosened my tongue, but this was digging in the dirt. I remembered 7th grade, the Lincoln School cafeteria. It was an autumn day, yellow leaves stuck to the playground floor. I was the skinny kid with glasses who read comic books at recess. Chloe Mitchell, with her blonde ponytail and that laugh that sounded like bells, was the girl who took my breath away. That day, I was carrying my tray. Mashed potatoes, gummy sausages, a glass of chocolate milk. I tripped over Tommy Hargrove's foot. Yes, the same last name as my boss, cruel coincidence, and everything flew. The mashed potatoes splattered on Chloe's sneakers. The milk spilled into a white puddle that spread like a stain of shame. The room erupted in laughter. "Look at the loser," Tommy shouted. Chloe wiped her skirt, frowning, and said, "Alan, are you okay?" It was an accident. But her voice was pity, not compassion. I got up, my face burning, and muttered, "Yeah, sorry," as I picked up the mess with trembling hands. The laughter lasted all week. I wrote down every detail: the smell of sour milk, the heat in my cheeks, the lump in my throat that prevented me from eating the next day. I sent it. Sweat on the back of my neck. Why did I feel exposed? It was anonymous, right? The rain intensified. Distant thunder rumbled. I looked at my watch. 10:30. I could stop, but the next button glowed like a hook. 3. What is your greatest fear? Don't talk about spiders or heights. Talk about the real thing. Describe how you imagine it manifesting itself. This was no longer a game. The site was escalating, as if testing my endurance. My greatest fear. I typed it slowly. Irrelevance. Not failure, but total emptiness. Imagine me at 50, in an office similar to the one I have now, but worse. A cubicle in a basement, correcting code for a boss who doesn't even remember my name. I come home to an empty apartment, with bills piled up and a microwave humming alone. No one calls. My college friends, married with children, post photos on Facebook of beach vacations, and I like them from the darkness. In the end, I die in an anonymous hospital bed, and the obituary reads, Alan Richter, 58, programmer. No one comes to the funeral. It manifests itself on nights like this, alone with a screen, wondering if I matter. And I know I do, that one day I'll make it happen if I don't change. The words flowed, raw, as if the keyboard were bleeding. I sent it. My heart was pounding. How much whiskey was left in the glass? I emptied it in one gulp. 4. Remember the last time you cried. Why was it? Describe the surroundings, the sounds, the smells. 2 years ago, my grandfather, Old Joe, the one who taught me to fish on Lake Michigan with makeshift bamboo rods, he died of a heart attack on his farm in Wisconsin. The funeral was a dry ritual. Family gathered in the Methodist church. Hymns that sounded like laments, the smell of wilted flowers and candle wax. I didn't cry there. I was the strong one, the 28-year-old grandson comforting my mother. But a week later, driving back to Chicago on I-94, the radio tuned into The Wait by the band, his favorite song. The sun was setting, staining the sky a dirty orange, and the traffic was a slow river of headlights. The smell of hamburgers from a McDonald's drive-thru seeped through the window. The tears came suddenly, sobs that forced me to pull over to the side of the road. "I miss you, Grandpa," I whispered behind the wheel as a truck roared by. I cried for the stories I didn't ask him, for the mornings of black coffee and talks about the war that I never delved into. Wrote it all down, reliving the tightness in my chest. I sent it. The room felt colder. Was it the rain or something else? The questions kept coming, one after another, like an interrogation in a windowless room. The 5th. 5. What is the secret you are most ashamed of? The one you haven't even told your therapist? Include how it affects you today. I typed about the plagiarism in my college thesis. The year was 2012, deadline pressure, a professor who hated me. I copied a paragraph from an online paper on machine learning algorithms and rewrote it just enough to pass. I graduated with honors, but that stain eats away at me every time I see my diploma framed on the wall. Today, it makes me doubt every line of code I write, paranoid that someone will find out and everything will fall apart. I sent it. 6th. 6. Describe a sexual fantasy you've never shared. Be explicit, but honest. My pulse quickened. This was invasive, a step too far. I thought about that lonely night a year ago after a breakup with Sarah, my ex of 6 months. I fantasized about being watched, not judged, but secretly desired by an anonymous crowd in a dark club. Invisible hands, whispers in the shadows, the ecstasy of being the center of attention without control. I wrote it down, words burning as I typed them, my face flushed. Who would read this? No one, I told myself. I sent it. 7th. 7. Have you ever lied about something that destroyed someone? Describe the impact. The lie to my best friend, Mark, about his girlfriend. I caught her flirting with me at a party, but I didn't tell him. He broke up with her for another reason, and now they live apart, with her hating him. Every time we see each other, I see the damage in his eyes. I wrote about the remorse that wakes me up at 3 in the morning. 8th. 8. Your medical history. List 3 past diagnoses and how they changed you. Appendectomy at 10, pain that left me terrified of hospitals, mild depression in college, pills that numb my soul, and a recent checkup, high cholesterol, a warning that my sedentary lifestyle would slowly kill me. Each one made me more cautious, more alone. 9th. 9. Your daily habits. Describe your morning and evening routine, including recurring thoughts. Morning. Black coffee, scrolling through my phone, looking for validation in likes. Night. Netflix until 2, thinking about what I did wrong that day. Patterns that trap me. 10th. 10. To verify your unique profile, we need a biometric identifier. Please upload a clear selfie of your face. Smile, if you can. My stomach churned. This was the limit. Biometric. Real data. I got up, the cold floor beneath my bare feet. I walked to the window, looking out at the wet street. Neon lights reflected in puddles. A car passing by with its windshield wipers squeaking. What if it was a scam? A virus? But curiosity, that damn thing, dragged me back. I picked up my phone and turned on the front camera. My face, 3-day beard, eyes sunken from alcohol, forced smile that looked like a grimace. I uploaded the photo. Send. Black screen. Seconds that stretched into hours. A message. Alan Michael Richter, profile complete. Generating final report. How did they know my name? Panic rose like bile. I tried to close the tab, but the browser froze. 1 minute, 2. Then the progress bar. 10%, 20%. Each tick was a hammer blow. I was sweating, my shirt sticking to my back. What the hell had I done? 100%. Link. Download dossier alanrichter.zip. I downloaded it. The file landed on the desktop with a beep. I opened it with hands shaking so much that I missed the click twice. Zip folder, extracting, subfolders, medical history, financial, photographs, videos, social media, locations, psychological, the mirror proposal. I started with medical history, scanned PDF files, the appendectomy report with blurry photos of the scar, blood test results from my last checkup at the clinic around the corner, the one I did out of paranoia after chest pain. Notes from my therapist from 3 years ago, sessions about post-college depression, how my patient portal was protected with 2FA. Someone had hacked that. Financial, Bank of America statements. My credit card debt from the trip to Mexico with Sarah. FICO score of 712, a copy of my W-2 from last year. And an Excel file, income projections based on my $65K salary with notes on debt potential under stress. Social media, screenshots of my inactive Facebook, deleted tweets from Twitter where I complained about Hargrove, private messages with Mark, including that joke about his ex that now embarrassed me. Locations, a Google map with pins, my current apartment, the office, the corner bar where I drink on Fridays, pins at my grandfather's farm, Lincoln School, and a recent one, yesterday's supermarket where I bought milk and cereal. But photos paralyzed me. Hundreds of images, selfies of me from Instagram, yes, but also me leaving the gym a month ago, sweaty and crestfallen. Me in the park, sitting on a bench reading 1984 for the umpteenth time, one from above like a drone. My window open in summer, me napping on the sofa. And yesterday's, walking down the sidewalk, phone in hand, oblivious to the hidden camera on some pole. Videos was worse. 30-second clips. 1. Me in the kitchen, washing dishes at dusk, humming a Springsteen song. Another sleeping, my chest rising and falling, recorded from the angle of my bedside table. An app on my phone. I checked. Nothing. A longer video. Me at my grandfather's funeral, with my back to the camera in the cemetery, the wind blowing the flags. Who filmed that? Psychological. A generated report, bar graphs with my answers. Vulnerability level, high. Main fear, irrelevance. Probability of collapse, 87%. Key secrets, plagiarism, weapon of leverage. Fantasy of exposure, ideal for humiliation dynamics. The last folder, the mirror proposal, 20-page PDF. Cover, my edited selfie, deep dark circles, bloodshot eyes, mouth twisted in a silent scream. Title, Alan Richter. Profile, 734 confirmed. Ideal candidate for extreme truths. The text was corporate, like an investor pitch. Extreme Truths is a live series, exclusively available by subscription on the deep web. Audience, 5,000 plus premium subscribers, paying 500 BTC per month for unlimited access. Format, 12 episodes per season, each 90 minutes of forced revelations and psychological resilience tests. Participants selected by AI based on profiles like yours. Vulnerable, but resilient enough to last. Show details. The participant is kidnapped, simulated or real depending on the contract. But what contract? Taken to an underground set in an abandoned bunker. 360 cameras, ambient microphones. The host, voice distorted, guides the phases. Phase 1, shame. Public revelation of secrets. For me, the plagiarism in your thesis will be projected on giant screens. Live calls to your university, your boss, your family. How long will it take you to beg? Phase 2, regression, reenactments. Actors like Chloe Mitchell will confront you in a school cafeteria set. Flying mashed potatoes, looped laughter. Will you break before recess? Phase 3, deprivation. Total darkness, 48 hours. Sounds of Buster barking growing fainter, as if you were losing him again. Exposure fantasies, projections of your lonely night. Audience voting for the next act. Phase 4, dismantling, the climax. We expose irrelevance, videos of your life edited as a time-lapse failure, friends feigning indifference, family forgetting you. Will you commit suicide on camera or beg for relevance? Rating projections. Richter will generate 2.3 million in extra subscriptions. ROI, 450%. Signed, Mirror Team, Dark Entertainment Division. I closed the PDF. The world spun. I vomited into the sink, the whiskey and dinner coming up in waves. I rinsed my mouth, shaking. I formatted the hard drive that night, a total wipe that took hours. I threw the phone in a dumpster 2 blocks away, walking in the rain until I was soaked. I slept with the light on, jumping at every creak in the house. The next morning, I called Mark. I need to move. Will you help me? He came over and loaded boxes without asking many questions. I rented a studio in Logan Square, a hole with thin walls, and a doorman who smelled of tobacco. I changed passwords, closed accounts, bought a burner phone. I went back to work, but every email from Hargrove set my nerves on edge. Did he know? The first few days were a false relief. Nothing. I walked to work on new routes, avoiding windows. I shopped at different stores, but the tension grew like an infection. A week later, a package at the door. No return address. Inside, a USB drive. I plugged it into a public PC at the library. Nothing. Empty. Coincidence or a warning? 2 weeks. On the subway, a guy in a hoodie stared at me. He got off at my station, following me 2 blocks. I ran home, barricaded myself in. The next day I checked. Just paranoia. 3 weeks. A dream. I dreamed of the set, red lights flashing, the host whispering, "Welcome, Alan. Time to be relevant." I woke up screaming, the neighbor banging on the wall. 1 month, I found a photo in my mailbox. Me, sleeping on the old couch, stuck on the back. "We're waiting for your yes." I burned it in the sink, smoke filling the room. I went back to the deep web one night, drunk, searching for extreme truths. Encrypted forums mentioned rumors. New candidate, programmer from Chicago. Good profile for dismantling. Heart in my throat. I shut everything down. Now, 3 months later, the weight is poison. Every morning, I check the locks 3 times. At work, I avoid elevators in case there are cameras. I go out with a knife in my pocket. Mark notices something, asks, "Are you okay, man?" I lie. Work stress. Yesterday, an email in an old account I thought I had deleted. Subject: pilot episode ready. Attachment: a thumbnail of my edited selfie. I didn't open it. I deleted it, but the damage is done. Nothing concrete has happened. Yet. But I know they're watching. In the reflection of the subway, strange eyes. In the crowd, footsteps that match mine. My life is a script waiting for the director. The fear of irrelevance is gone. Now I fear being the center of attention. The man on the screen breaking down for strangers. I wait for the click, the kidnapping, the announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, Alan Richter enters the scene. And when he arrives, will I resist, or will I be the perfect entertainment? My name is Martin, and what I'm about to tell you is, without a doubt, the most intense and disturbing thing I've ever experienced. This story is not for the faint of heart. There are no supernatural monsters or ghosts. The horror I encountered was terribly real, created by and for humans, and the memory of it has poisoned every corner of my mind. It is a burden I carry on my shoulders, a weight that has robbed me of sleep and stolen my peace. Sometimes curiosity is a bottomless pit, and I, like an idiot, leaned in too far and fell in. It all started, like so many bad things these days, from the comfort of my apartment in a nondescript apartment complex on the outskirts of Phoenix, Arizona. It was a Friday night like any other. Abby, my girlfriend, had gone to spend the weekend with her family in Tucson, leaving me alone with the echo of her goodbye kiss and the scent of her perfume still lingering in the air. I was 32 years old, with a stable job as a data analyst at a logistics company that paid me just enough to keep me from drowning in debt, but not enough to feel alive. That night, after a day of endless meetings and emails piling up like sand in the desert, I came home exhausted. I opened a cold beer from the fridge, collapsed onto the worn-out sofa, and turned on my laptop on the coffee table. The apartment was a cube of blocks, an open kitchen with dirty dishes in the sink, a bedroom with rumpled sheets, and a bathroom that dripped incessantly. Nothing special, just a temporary refuge. Boredom was eating away at me. The TV spat out car commercials and reality shows where people yelled over nonsense. I turned everything off and opened my browser. I knew it was a bad idea, but the temptation was like an itch on the back of my neck. I wasn't a novice. Like many, I had snooped around the deep web before, always with a VPN activated and a tingling nervousness that made my pulse race. I considered myself a tourist of the forbidden, a spectator watching the seediest aspects of humanity from the sidelines. That night, after jumping through several forums and .onion links I found on a forgotten subreddit, I ended up at a marketplace called Charon's Bazaar. The interface was surprisingly professional, like a dark and twisted version of Amazon. Categories were listed in a sidebar: drugs of all types and potencies, unserialized weapons, fake passports and diplomas, stolen Netflix accounts, the banality of evil packaged for retail sale. I browsed with a mixture of revulsion and fascination. I read the sellers' descriptions, which promised discretion and guaranteed quality. One guy was selling fentanyl in glass vials, with reviews from buyers saying, "Flawless delivery, no customs." Another was offering 3D printed guns, with photos of tests in a remote desert. I shuddered to think of the destroyed lives that sustained this digital trade. I was about to close everything, feeling that my morbid curiosity had been satisfied for the moment, when a category at the bottom of the page caught my eye. It was at the very end, almost hidden, as if the site reserved it for the most daring. It was called Unique Experiences. The name was ambiguous, intriguing. What kind of experiences? Private tours of forbidden places, access to classified information, something more sinister. Morbid curiosity got the better of common sense. I clicked, and the page loaded with a slight delay, as if the server were evaluating my IP. It displayed a shorter list with fewer sellers. The titles were deliberately vague. Extreme sensation guaranteed, priced at $200. A memory that will last a lifetime for $5,000. Unleash your deepest inhibitions, up to $20,000. My heart was beating a little harder. This was different from drugs or fake documents. This was abstract, psychological, and that made it much more unsettling. Buyer comments were sparse but striking. It changed everything. I don't sleep the same. Worth every penny, but be prepared. One of the listings, with a relatively low price of $250, was simply titled Pandora's Box. The description read, "Do you have the courage to open it? An exclusive digital collection that will change your perception. Only for open and curious minds. Instant download after purchase." There were no photos, just an icon of an old box with chains. My mind, intoxicated by the clandestine atmosphere and the loneliness of the night, began to wander. I thought maybe it was disturbing art, perhaps fake snuff films to shock, or maybe a compilation of the darkest secrets of famous people, something that, although unpleasant, would be just a macabre spectacle, a digital trophy of my foray into the depths. In a moment of utter stupidity, a mental lapse caused by curiosity and perhaps a touch of arrogance. I can handle it, I'm just an observer. My hand slipped. Instead of clicking back, my finger pressed the Buy Now button. The cursor hesitated for a second, but the site didn't ask for confirmation. It was as if it knew I wouldn't change my mind. There was no warning, no two-step confirmation. The screen flashed and displayed a message. Transaction completed. Thank you for your purchase. Your download link is available below. A cold sweat ran down my back. What had I just done? Why? $250 had been debited from my Bitcoin digital wallet, which I used only for this kind of nonsense. I felt like an idiot. I had bought a mysterious product on the black market. It was the very definition of asking for trouble. With a knot in my stomach tightening like a noose, I clicked on the download link. A heavy, compressed file, about 8 GB, began downloading onto my computer. It was called pandorabox.rare. The progress bar moved slowly, each percentage point a reminder of my mistake. I tried to pause it, but the site had already sent the file. It was irreversible. While I waited, I paced around the apartment, the beer forgotten on the table. I looked out the window. The lights of the cars on the I-10 freeway flickered like distant eyes. The Arizona desert stretched out beyond, black and infinite. What if it was malware? A virus that would steal my bank details? Or worse, something that would track me? The VPN was active, but nothing was foolproof. When the file finished, I extracted it to a new, empty folder on an external drive that I immediately disconnected, as if containing it in a defined space could limit its toxicity. Inside were a series of video files numbered 1 through 15 with no further description. They varied in length, 5 minutes, 12 minutes, 20 minutes, and a text document called contacts.txt. Nothing else. There was no readme, no instructions, just that. My breath caught in my throat. This was real. I'd bought something, and now I had it on my hard drive. Once again, curiosity overcame my instinct for self-preservation. With a trembling hand, which missed the click twice, I double-clicked on the first video. The player opened with a dull beep. The quality was grainy, as if filmed with a hidden camera in a high corner. It showed a dimly lit room with bare, cracked cement walls and a dirty mat on the floor, stained with something dark. A boy, no more than 7 or 8 years old, was sitting on the mat, his head down, his knees pressed against his chest. He was wearing a threadbare t-shirt with some cartoon character on it, a faded superhero, perhaps Spider-Man, and shorts that were too big for him. The camera moved slightly, a clumsy pan, and a man's voice, off camera, said something in a language I didn't recognize, Russian, Arabic, in a low, almost whispering tone. The boy didn't even look up. His shoulders shook once like a stifled sob. I didn't understand. What was this? Footage from an orphanage in some war-torn country, a situation of extreme poverty, sold as raw reality. My mind searched for excuses, rationalizations for not turning it off. Then the man entered the frame. Tall, wearing a black hoodie that hid his face in shadows, he approached the boy with deliberate steps. He reached out, grabbed the boy's shoulder tightly. The boy cringed, a whimper escaping his throat. The man said something else, laughing softly, and pulled the boy up. And at that moment, my brain, in an act of self-protection, refused to process what my eyes were seeing. It was as if a curtain of steel had fallen between my consciousness and the image on the screen. There was only one sensation, absolute cold, a void opening in the center of my chest, sucking out all the warmth, all the air, all humanity. I saw blurry shapes, movements I didn't want to name, sounds, a muffled cry, fabric tearing, that pierced my ears like nails. I don't remember the details. My mind has erased them, thankfully, replacing them with a black blur. I only remember the panic, a pure animal instinct to flee. I screamed, a kind of muffled, hoarse cry that echoed in the empty apartment, and I slammed the player shut with the mouse. The screen went dark, but the image remained etched on my retina, an afterimage floating like smoke. I got up from the chair, so quickly that it fell backward with a crash that made the floor vibrate. I staggered toward the bathroom, the hallway seeming to stretch out like in a nightmare, and vomited the beer and dinner into the sink, my hands clutching the white porcelain, shaking uncontrollably. The vomit splattered the mirror, and in the reflection I saw my face, pale, eyes wide, mouth twisted in a grimace of disgust. It wasn't art. It wasn't fake snuff for provocation. It was real. It was the worst thing imaginable. It was child pornography, raw, unfiltered, captured in a real hell. The horror was not only what I had seen, but the fact that I owned it. That garbage was on my hard drive. I had paid for it. My stupid curiosity, my arrogance as a digital tourist, had made me a link, however tiny, in that chain of misery. I had financed that hell with $250. Every penny I earned in my shitty job, analyzing truck shipments through the desert, had gone into the hands of monsters who destroyed innocent lives. Gasping for breath, tears of rage and disgust burning my eyes, I returned to the computer. The screen still showed the video thumbnail, frozen at the moment the man entered. In a blind fury, I dragged the folder to the recycle bin and emptied it, the icon disappearing with a sucking sound. Then I opened the search menu and typed secure delete. I found a free utility that I quickly downloaded, paranoid, checking to see if it was clean, and ran a 7-step algorithm to overwrite the free space on the hard drive. I wanted it to disappear. I wanted to burn that digital trace of my soul. The process took half an hour, the laptop fan whirring like an angry swarm. While I waited, I poured myself a shaky glass of water, but I couldn't drink it. The lump in my throat was too tight. But then I remembered. The text document. Contacts. TXT. It was in the folder I had just deleted, but secure deletion wasn't instantaneous. Part of me, the part that was still rational, screamed at me to let it go, to shut everything down, format the computer, and pretend it had never happened. I unplugged the laptop, turned it off, and put it in a drawer, as if hiding it would isolate it from the world. I paced around the room, the clock on the wall reading 2:17 a.m. The apartment creaked, with the desert wind seeping through the joints. Every shadow on the wall looked like movement, a lurking silhouette. I tried to distract myself. I played music on my phone, a classic rock playlist, but the distorted guitars sounded like muffled screams. I sat on the couch, My knees pressed against my chest and tried to rationalize. It was a mistake. No one knows. It's over. But another part of me, a part poisoned by what I had seen, needed to know. Was that what the title Pandora's Box referred to? Not just seeing the horror, but having access to it. The residual morbid curiosity, mixed with guilty nausea, pushed me back. I turned the laptop back on, the slow, eternal startup, temporarily restored the file from the trash, and opened it. With a terror that chilled me to the bone, I double-clicked on contacts.txt. It was a list, usernames on dark forums, email addresses encrypted with Proton Mail or Tutnota, and onion links to private chats. And next to each one, brief descriptions. They weren't product descriptions. They were descriptions of children. Blonde, 6 years old, docile, available for live video chat, $500 hour. Twins, 8 years old, resilient, family package with express delivery, $3,000. Boy, 10 years old, new to the circuit, scared but trainable, 1-2 times $100 per personalized session. And the price, always a price. Logistical details, payment methods in Monero, shipping routes from Eastern Europe or Southeast Asia, guarantees of freshness and total anonymity. One contact in particular, Shadow Broker 87, offered custom orders, specify age, gender, scenario, turnaround 48 hours. It wasn't just a catalog of videos. It was a catalog of children. For making your own video, for custom orders. The marketplace wasn't just selling the experience of watching, it was selling the experience of creating. And I had the contact list in my hands. I could, in theory, send a message and ask for more. Or worse, report it. The screen blurred with tears I didn't realize were falling. I collapsed on the floor, overwhelmed by a wave of nausea and a despair so deep it had no name. It wasn't just disgust, it was guilt, a cosmic guilt. I had touched the most absolute rot, and now I was part of it, even if only as a spectator who stumbled and fell into it. That list, those children, they were real. Somewhere in the world, in a room like the one I saw in the video, they were suffering, and I had the information that, in theory, could lead to their captors. But who would I give it to? The police? How could I explain that I had this list? Hi, officer. I was buying illegal stuff on the deep web and accidentally acquired a catalog of child slaves. I would look like one of them. Or worse, what if the police were corrupt? What if, when I tried to report it, someone in the department alerted the owners of that market? The site promised absolute discretion. What would they do to ensure it? I once read in a forum about a guy in Europe who tried to report something similar and ended up with his house burned down. Accidentally. Fear took hold of me. A visceral, primitive fear. The fear that they would come for me. The owners of Charon's Bazaar, the monsters behind Pandora's Box, people who trafficked in the lives of children. Soulless people. If I filed a complaint, I would leave a trail. My name, my address in Phoenix, would be linked to their operation. It would be a risk. And people like that eliminate risks. I spent the night awake, sitting on the living room floor staring at the black screen of my computer, now turned off again. Every creak in the building, the air conditioning cycling, a neighbor walking in flip-flops, was them. Coming to silence me, coming to punish me for looking where I shouldn't have. I tried to sleep on the sofa, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw the boy, his worn t-shirt, his head bowed, his shoulder under the man's hand. I woke up sweating, my heart pounding. At dawn, with the sun filtering orange through the blinds, I made a cowardly decision. I wouldn't report it. I would erase all traces. I completely reformatted the computer, a factory reset that deleted years of photos and documents. I took out the hard drive, wrapped it in a bag, and threw it into an industrial trash container in an industrial park on the outskirts of town, driving with gloves on so as not to leave fingerprints. I changed all my passwords, email, bank, work. I deleted my Bitcoin account. I sank into a state of constant paranoia, checking the locks 3 times before going to sleep, jumping at every notification on my phone. Abby returned on Sunday afternoon with a suitcase full of dirty clothes and a tired smile. "Martin, how was your weekend alone? Did you see that Cardinals game?" I hugged her tightly, smelling her hair, but my mind was elsewhere. She noticed something was wrong. My red eyes, 2 days' worth of stubble, the messy apartment. "Hey, are you okay? You look like a zombie." I told her I'd had a bad case of the flu and had spent the weekend in bed with a fever. "Nothing serious, just the desert drying out my lungs." She frowned, but she believed me, or pretended to. She made tacos that night, and we ate in silence, me forcing down each bite while my mind repeated the contact list like a cursed mantra. I couldn't tell her the truth. I couldn't put that weight on her shoulders, or risk her also becoming a target by mistake. What if we spoke loudly and someone heard us? What if the apartment had microphones? Paranoia had already set in. The following days were a slow hell. Monday, at the office, a gray cubicle in an air-conditioned office building surrounded by colleagues chatting about the weather and traffic. I sat in front of the screen, analyzing shipping data, trucks loaded with appliances crossing the border. But the numbers blurred. Every click of the mouse reminded me of the video. At lunch in the cafeteria, a coworker, Dave, played a video on his phone of his nephew playing soccer. The boy laughed, kicking the ball. I excused myself, ran to the bathroom, and washed my face with cold water until my hands hurt. "You're a monster," I said to myself in the mirror, "not for what you saw, but for doing nothing." That week, the tension escalated. Wednesday night, an anonymous email in my work account from a gibberish address. Subject: "Welcome to the club." Inside, just a link. My heart stopped. I deleted it without opening it, but the panic lasted for hours. Coincidence? Or had they tracked me down? I changed the router in my apartment and installed a new firewall. Thursday, at Safeway Supermarket, pushing my cart down the cereal aisle, I felt eyes on the back of my neck. An older man in a baseball cap stared at me from 2 aisles away. I sped up, paid quickly, and drove home looking in the rearview mirror. Was he following me? I stopped at a traffic light and saw a black car identical to mine behind me. I accelerated when the light turned green, turning left without signaling. The car went straight ahead. Paranoia, I told myself. Just paranoia. But on Friday, something broke the dam. Abby and I went out to dinner at a Mexican restaurant on the corner, El Toro. She ordered margaritas and laughed at a silly joke about my boss. I nodded, but my mind was on the list. Twins, 8 years old. Suddenly, at the next table, a family. Parents and 2 identical blonde girls, laughing with spoons in their ice cream. One of them spilled sauce on her shirt, and her mother tenderly wiped it off. My fork fell onto my plate with a clang. Abby touched my hand. "Martin, you're as white as a ghost." I mumbled an excuse about the heat and asked for the check. In the car on the way back, I hyperventilated. "Tell me what's wrong," she insisted. "Nothing, just work stress." Lie. Another lie. Saturday. Home alone while Abby went to the gym. I couldn't resist. I opened an anonymous session on Tor, a broken promise to myself, and searched for Karen's Bazaar. The site was still there, updated with new listings. Unique Experiences had a new item. Pandora Box 2.0, more doors, more truths. The price, $400, a new comment. User MTN89 bought and recommends, changed my life. MTN89, Martin, my initial. Sweat broke out. I closed everything, but the damage was done. Had they marked me? That night, I dreamed about the room, the child screaming my name, the man with my face under the hood. I woke up drenched. Abby murmuring, "Another nightmare?" Weeks passed in a fog of anxiety. 2 months later, a package at the door. No sender, just my name in block letters. Inside, a cardboard box with a USB drive and a note. "You forgot this." The USB drive. I plugged it into a public PC at the library, trembling. Audio files, children crying, overlaid with distorted laughter. I destroyed it in the bathroom, breaking it with my heel. Who? How did they know my address? I called the police that night, anonymously. There's a catalog on the deep web, children. The operator took notes, but his voice was skeptical. Sir, we need more details. IP, evidence. I hung up, terrified that I'd left a trail. 3 months. Abby confronted me. Martin, you're changing. You don't sleep, you jump at everything. Is there someone else? Drugs? Tears in her eyes. I yelled that she didn't understand, that it was work. We fought. She went to her sister's house. Alone again, the apartment felt like a cell. I walked through the desert at dawn, the sun burning my skin, screaming into the void. Why didn't I report it? Out of cowardice. Yes, fear of prison, of scrutiny, but worse, fear that nothing would change. Those monsters would continue. 4 months, a recurring dream. I'm in the room. The camera is filming me. The child is me, 8 years old, on my grandfather's farm in New Mexico. The man enters, and it's my reflection. I wake up screaming, checking windows. At work, a new project. Analyzing human trafficking routes disguised as logistics. Cruel irony. I quit that week, citing burnout. 5 months. I tried therapy. An online psychologist, anonymous. I told him a watered-down version. I saw something dark on the internet. I can't get it out of my head. He said, report it. Free yourself. But how? Investigating on my own, I found whistleblower forums. Guys who disappeared after posting. One in 2023 in Texas, similar to me. His house empty, police saying, run away. 6 months. Abby came back tentatively. I miss you, but I need the old Martine. I tried. Romantic dinners, walks in South Mountain Park. But on one, I saw a drone buzzing overhead. Surveillance. I ran home, barricading myself in. She cried, you're paranoid. What really happened to you? I almost told her everything. I bought something. I saw, but I shut up. I couldn't. 7 months. An email to a burner account. We know you looked, join or disappear. Link to Android Onion chat. I didn't open it, but I copied the IP and looked it up. Servers in Russia. I called the FBI tip line, voice distorted. Deep web, children, Karen. They gave me a case number. I waited. Nothing. 8 months. Now. Nothing concrete has happened. No one has knocked on my door. No one has sent me another package. Abby and I are limping along in our relationship, couples therapy on the horizon. I work freelance from home, avoiding offices. But something died inside me that night. Naivety, the belief that the world was deep down, a safe place, evaporated. What keeps me awake at night, what keeps me from sleeping, is not the fear of being found. It is the knowledge that those children, whose descriptions I read on that cursed list, are somewhere, being exploited, suffering a hell I cannot even conceive. And I, who had the chance to do something, did nothing out of fear. I'm a coward, I admit it. Fear overpowered my conscience. And that is the burden I now carry. The image of that child in the cartoon t-shirt, with his head down, visits me in my dreams. And I know, with a certainty that devours me from within, that while I am here, safe in my apartment, they are still there. And there is nothing, absolutely nothing I can do to help them. That is my personal hell, knowing that evil exists, having looked it in the eye and having looked away. But lately the guilt has mutated. Whole nights spent planning, contacting Interpol anonymously, leaking the list to journalists. One day, maybe, or maybe not. The desert outside whispers promises of oblivion, but I know there is no escape. The box is open, and the evils fly free, including mine. I had always considered myself a cautious person. My life in Austin, Texas was normal, predictable, almost boring. I worked as a graphic designer at a small agency downtown, creating logos for Tex-Mex restaurants and campaigns for startups that would never take off. I lived in a converted loft in a gentrified neighborhood near South Congress, overlooking the I-35 freeway that roared with constant traffic. I had a Siamese cat named Loki, who spent his afternoons licking himself on the windowsill, and I hung out with my friends on the weekends, brunch at Joe's Coffee, then yoga at Barton Springs if the heat didn't melt us. It was a comfortable routine, the kind of life my parents would approve of from their home in Dallas. But beneath that veneer of normality burned an unhealthy curiosity for the forbidden, not for drugs or guns, but for knowledge. I wanted to see what people were hiding, to peer into the abyss to understand its depth. That desire led me, again and again, to the deep web. It started as an innocent hobby, or so I told myself. In college, at UT Austin, I had taken an elective course on cybersecurity, where the professor gave us a glimpse of Tor and its ethical uses. But I went further. I downloaded the browser, set up a paid VPN with servers in Switzerland, and created a virtual machine on my MacBook to isolate any traces. At first, it was harmless. Forums on cryptocurrencies, leaks of government documents, even Soviet-era recipes. I felt like an explorer, mapping invisible territories. But over time, my curiosity escalated. I started visiting sites with names like Shadow Bazaar or Echo Chamber, where people shared anonymous confessions or sold stolen data. I knew the risks: viruses that encrypted your hard drive, scams that left you broke, and worse, content that haunted you in nightmares. I read stories on Reddit from users who swore they had seen unreal things and then couldn't sleep for months. I laughed. I'm smart, I thought. It won't happen to me. I knew the dangers. You're nobody on darknet forums if you haven't read the warnings. Don't trust anyone. Your IP can be traced even if you use Tor. There are things that, once seen, you can't forget. With the arrogance of someone who thinks they're smart, I thought those warnings were for other people, for the reckless who surfed without protection. I used a paid VPN, an operating system on a virtual machine, and surfed with the paranoia of a spy. I cleared my cache after every session, used passwords generated by a manager, and never, ever gave out personal information. I believed that my precautions were an impenetrable shield. I didn't understand that the real danger wasn't that my computer would be hacked, but that what I saw would hack my mind. It was on one of those sleepless nights, with the city asleep and only the hum of my laptop for company, that I found the forum. It was a Tuesday in October, the air conditioning fighting against the sticky humidity seeping through the cracks. I had finished a midnight deadline, a website redesigned for a client who changed his mind every hour, and the stress had my nerves on edge. Loki purred on my lap, but even that couldn't calm the emptiness. I turned on my MacBook in the kitchen with a cup of chamomile tea that tasted like cardboard, and opened Tor. The connection was established with that familiar twist of the onion router, like a digital whisper. I browsed the usual links, a forum on ethical hacks, another on 5G conspiracy theories. Nothing new. Then, in a thread titled Streams That Take Your Breath Away, someone mentioned the kaleidoscope. Live streams of reality without filters, only for the brave. The onion link hung at the end with a disclaimer. Enter at your own risk. There is no turning back. I clicked. The page loaded slowly, as if the server were on the other side of the world testing my patience. The interface was Spartan. A list of links, each with a title and a viewer counter. Most had hundreds, even thousands of numbers. Alley in Bangkok, 2.4K, with a flashing neon thumbnail and blurry silhouettes. Private Party Moscow, 1.8K. Sounds of techno music seeping into the preload. Interrogation, 934, which sounded like BDSM roleplay, but with a nuance that made my skin crawl. I skipped over them with cold disdain. They were too popular, too generic for my taste. I wanted something raw, something that wasn't diluted by the crowd, until I reached the end of the list. An untitled link, just a code. ST734, and the counter, 7. 7 people. That piqued my interest. What could be so niche, so specific that it would only attract 7 viewers? An occult ritual, a live autopsy. My curiosity was piqued, that itch I couldn't ignore. Without thinking twice, I clicked. The screen went dark for a second, as if the site was loading an invisible weight, and then filled with a video rectangle, grainy and bathed in an ominous reddish hue. At first, nothing was distinguishable. It was a room or a basement, almost completely dark, lit only by a dim red light hanging from the ceiling, casting long, distorted shadows like veins on a concrete wall. There was no sound, or if there was, it was muted by default. The silence gave it a nightmarish quality, like watching something from behind soundproof glass. A counter in the lower right corner read, "Viewers, 8. Now, thanks to me." I leaned toward the laptop, frowning, the cursor hovering over the volume button. Was that it? An empty room, a failed stream. I was about to close it, disappointed by the waste of time, when 2 figures entered the frame from the left. They were men, tall, with black hoods hiding their faces, moving with practiced efficiency, as if they had done this 1,000 times before. They were dragging something heavy between them. A rusty metal chair, its legs squeaking against the concrete floor as they positioned it in the center of the red beam of light. And in the chair, tied with thick ropes that dug into the wood, was a woman. She was wearing the same faded jeans I had seen 1,000 times. Levi's ripped at the knees, bought on sale at the San Marcos outlet, and a gray sweatshirt with a university logo that was painfully familiar to me. The University of Texas at Austin, the stylized longhorn faded from washing. Her head was covered with a coarse cloth hood, just like her captor's, tied at the back of her neck with a rough cord. My heart skipped a beat. This was no longer an abstract broadcast. This was real. The horror became tangible, a weight on my chest that made it difficult to breathe. My fingers clung to the edge of the desk, my nails digging into the wood. I wanted to close the window, turn off the laptop, and pretend I had never clicked. But a macabre force, the same one that had brought me there, kept me glued to my chair. The 7 viewers, including me now, the counter rose to 9, were accomplices to this. Who were they? In what hole in the world were they watching this? The chat, a thin thread on the right side of the screen, was inactive, just black avatars and empty timestamps. One of the men approached the motionless woman. With a sudden movement, he ripped the hood off her head, throwing it on the floor like trash. The world stopped. Time fractured into 1,000 pieces. It wasn't a gradual recognition. It was a physical impact, a punch in the stomach that knocked all the air out of my lungs. The teacup tipped over, spilling onto the table in a hot, steaming puddle. It was Sarah Miller, my college roommate, the girl I had shared laughter, dreams, and 3 a.m. pizzas with for 3 years in that stuffy dorm room at Jester Center. The one who had held my hand when my then-boyfriend Jake dumped me for a sorority girl at a spring party. The one who knew all my secrets, the unrequited crush on the design professor, the miscarriage I never told anyone about, and I knew hers, the fear of heights that paralyzed her on the Ferris wheel at the state fair, the rejection letter from law school that had made her cry on my shoulder. We had planned to conquer Austin together after graduation, but life pulled us apart. She moved to Houston for a job at a marketing firm, and we sent each other sporadic messages, "Check out this meme," or "Happy birthday, bitch." But our contact dwindled over the last 2 years. The last time I saw her was at a mutual friend's wedding, dancing with a guy who smelled of cheap cologne, laughing with that husky laugh that filled rooms. And now she was there, on my screen, her eyes wide with primitive terror, her mouth covered with silver duct tape that stuck to her pale skin. Her brown hair, which she always wore with pride, long and wavy to her shoulders, was matted and dirty, stuck to her forehead with sweat. She had a fresh purple bruise on her left cheek as if it had been made hours earlier, and a shallow cut on her lower lip that bled in slow drops. A guttural sound, which I didn't know I could make, escaped from my throat, a muffled groan like that of a wounded animal. I put my hands over my mouth, stifling a scream that threatened to burst out. No, it couldn't be. It was a nightmare, a ridiculous resemblance, a hired actress who happened to look like her. My mind refused to accept the evidence before my eyes, thrashing in denial like a fish in a net. But it was her, unmistakably her. The little mole next to her upper lip, the one we always joked was her secret beauty mark. The shape of her eyebrows, arched in a permanent gesture of irony. They were Sarah's eyes, the same ones that had so often sparkled with joy on tequila nights on 6th Street, now clouded with utter panic, dilated like a deer in headlights, begging for help that couldn't come because I was the only one who could see. The stream chat, which until then had been inactive, came to life with a beep. The other 6 viewers, now 8 with those who joined after me, began typing, their messages appearing in rapid succession like bullets from a machine gun. User 734A. Finally, let's get started. How long will she last? User Grim. She looks really scared. Good choice this time, not like last time. User 0. Let the game begin. I bet she cries in less than a minute. 50 creds. User Shade 9. Zoom in on her eyes. I want to see the break. Each message was a stab in the chest, a reminder that they were human beings somewhere in the world. Europe, Asia, right here in Texas, writing about my friend as if she were an object, a broken toy for their sadistic amusement. Betting virtual credits like in a sick casino. I was just another one of them. I was there, watching, my cursor hovering over the exit button but not clicking. I hadn't called the police. I hadn't closed the window. I was paralyzed, mesmerized by the horror, the spilled tea cooling on my skin as Loki meowed confusedly at my feet. One of the men, the shorter one, with a stocky build that strained the hood, approached Sarah and ripped the tape from her mouth with a sharp tug. The skin on her lips tore slightly, and a trickle of blood oozed out. She took a deep breath, a harsh gasp that sounded like a broken bellows, and then a heart-wrenching scream filled the speakers of my laptop. A scream I knew intimately. A scream I had heard once before when we almost hit a stray dog with the car on a road at night, and Sarah slammed on the brakes, screaming in sheer panic. It was the sound of Sarah's pure terror, amplified by the cheap microphone that picked up every nuance. "Please," she begged, her voice broken by the sobs that shook her body. "Take my money. Take everything. My family will pay whatever you want. Please don't hurt me. Call my sister. She'll give you whatever you want." The men said nothing. They just looked at each other under their hoods, a silent exchange that lasted for what seemed like an eternity. The tall one, thinner, with cat-like movements, approached first, pulling a hunting knife from his belt, the blade glinting red in the light. Sarah began to struggle against the ropes, her body convulsing in a desperate attempt to free herself, the chair legs scraping the floor with a screech that made my teeth grind. The ropes bit into her skin, leaving red marks on her wrists, but they didn't give way. "No," she screamed, her voice rising an octave, breaking into a sob. "Please, no, help, someone help me, God, please." Her screams echoed in my silent room, mingling with my own ragged gasps. I was crying without realizing it, tears falling on the keyboard, smudging the keys. I wanted to scream with her. I wanted to turn everything off, disconnect from reality, and run to the nearest police station. But my limbs wouldn't respond. I was trapped in that moment, forced to witness the destruction of a life I had loved, the chat buzzing with more bets. User Grim. "Break it already, bitch." The viewer counter rose to 12. Each one was an invisible executioner. The tall man grabbed Sarah by the hair and pulled her head back, exposing her neck at a vulnerable angle. She screamed in pain, a high-pitched, desperate sound that stabbed into my brain like a knife, reverberating in my ears even after it stopped. The knife traced a shallow line across her collarbone, Not enough to cut deep, but enough for a red line to spring forth, snaking under her sweatshirt. Sarah choked on a sob, her body arching against her restraints. And then the other man approached, unbuckling his belt with a deliberate slowness that made time stretch. The chat exploded. User 0. Yes, showtime. Sarah saw the movement, her eyes widening, an animal panic in them. No, please, I'm a virgin. No. Wait, I lied, but not like this. Call someone, anyone. Her voice broke into sobs, pleading with ghosts. The short man pushed her forward in the chair, tearing the front of her jeans with his hands, the sound of fabric ripping like thunder in my ears. I kept watching the video, and the horror began as they started to rape and beat her while she resisted. The tall one held her by the shoulders, digging his fingers in until the skin whitened around his fingernails, while the short one penetrated her brutally, growling under his hood. Sarah screamed, an uninterrupted torrent of, "Stop! It hurts! Help!" Her body convulsing in arcs of pain, her legs kicking uselessly against the ropes that bound them to the legs of the chair. Each thrust was a dull thud, accompanied by a punch to her ribs when she tried to turn, the impact causing her head to bounce against the back of the chair. The bruise on her cheek spread, turning black, and blood from her nose dripped onto her lap, mixing with sweat and tears. The chat was frenzied. User 734A, harder, make her bleed. User Shade 9, zoom in on her face. I want to see the tears. The number of viewers rose to 15, virtual donations clinking in a counter beside it. I couldn't look away. Every second was an eternity of vicarious agony, my stomach churning with nausea rising in my throat. I tried to move, to reach for the phone on the table, but my hands were shaking so badly that I dropped it on the floor. Sarah's scream turned into hoarse moans, her resistance weakening into ragged gasps, her body limp but still trembling. The men rotated positions, the tall one now in front, laughing, a guttural sound distorted by the mask, while the short one pounded her back with his clenched fist, each impact a wet thud that echoed in the basement. It lasted minutes that felt like hours, the video uncut, the fixed camera capturing every angle without mercy. Sarah murmured my name once. Jess. Please. Or so I thought I heard, a delirium of my broken mind, but it was enough to break me. I vomited into the kitchen sink, the acid burning my throat, while the stream continued on the screen, oblivious. Finally, after what seemed like a sadistic climax, the men pulled away, panting, adjusting their hoods. Sarah hung in the chair like a broken doll, silent sobs shaking her chest, her head fallen, blood and fluid staining her torn jeans. The tall one put her hood back on, a gesture almost tender in its cruelty, and the short one activated the mute. The chat applauded. User grim. 8 to 10. Next time, more blood. The viewer counter dropped to 10 as some left, satisfied. I slammed the laptop shut, the black screen reflecting my gaunt face, eyes swollen and red. I collapsed on the floor, Loki sniffing my hair in confusion. I cried until there was nothing left, an ugly, convulsive cry that left my throat raw. How long? Hours, perhaps. The sun came up, staining the blinds pink, and I was still there, curled up in a ball. I had to do something, call the police, but what would I say? I saw my friend being that on an illegal stream. They would think I was crazy, or worse, they would investigate me for accessing the deep web. Sarah, God, Sarah needed real help, not my panic. I crawled to the phone, my hands still shaking. I dialed her Houston number, the one I hadn't used in months. It rang and rang until it went to voicemail. Hey, it's Sarah. Leave a message, or better yet, a meme. I hung up, the beep like a gunshot. I tried again, and again. Nothing. Text message. Sarah, it's Jess. Call me now. Emergency. Sent. I waited, staring at the screen as if I could conjure up a response. Nothing. I called her sister Emily, the one who lived in Dallas. Jess, what's going on? It's 6 a.m. I told her a watered-down version. I don't know. Sarah isn't answering. I'm worried. Have you talked to her? Emily hesitated. She sent me a selfie of her new haircut yesterday. She said she was going to a bar with friends. Why the panic? I hung up with a vague excuse, my heart racing. The day dissolved into a fog of anxiety. I went to work on autopilot, sitting in my cubicle drawing abstract shapes that were nothing. My boss passing by and asking, "Everything okay, Jess? You look dead." I nodded, lying. At lunch, I checked my phone every 2 minutes. Nothing from Sarah. Emily sent a text. I texted her. She's not responding. Probably hungover. Relax. But I couldn't. That night, against all sense, I opened Tor again. The kaleidoscope was still there, ST734 offline. I searched for related forums, threads about real streams, rumors. It's a network of kidnappings for hire. They pay for views. My stomach sank. What if I had paid for something without knowing? No, it was free. But access, did they track me? Paranoia grew like weeds. That week, every shadow in my loft was a hooded figure. Loki jumped off the couch one night, and I screamed, throwing a pillow. I slept with the light on, my phone charging next to me, 911 pre-dialed. I called the police anonymously on Wednesday. There's a stream on the deep web, a woman being tortured, code ST734. The operator took notes, voice neutral. "Ma'am, we need more details. URL? Location?" I hung up, terrified I had left a trail. What if they were part of it? Corruption in the Austin PD. Friday, a package at the door. No return address, just my name. Inside, a gray sweatshirt identical to Sarah's, stained with something red. A USB drive attached. I plugged it into a public library, trembling between shelves of bestsellers. Video. Sarah again, now in a different room, screaming my name. "Jess, if you see this, help. They have me in..." Cut. The stream chat came back to me. I threw up in the library bathroom, a guard asking if I was okay. I contacted mutual friends. "Hey, have you heard from Sarah? Missing." Rumors. She said she was going on a surprise trip. Her boss saw her on Monday. Nothing concrete. Emily called hysterically on Saturday. The police say she's an adult. They can't do anything without 48 hours. I drove to Houston on I-10 with my heart in my throat, stopping at gas stations to cry. I looked for her apartment. Door ajar, things scattered, but the landlord said she moved out a week ago, left the key. Lie. Her Instagram, inactive since Sunday. Back in Austin, the stream came back online on Sunday. ST734. Continued. 20 viewers already. Sarah, more broken, fresh bruises begging at the camera. "Jess, I know you're watching. Please." What? Panic overwhelmed me. They had seen me in the chat. User Jess87, my anonymous handle. I closed everything, but it was too late. Anonymous calls that night. Heavy breathing, then click. Weeks of tension. I followed the case in the local news. Nothing. Online therapy, but the therapist said, "Sounds like vicarious trauma. Report it." I did. FBI tip line, voice distorted. Case number, silence. Abby, my best friend now, noticed. "Jess, you're disappearing. What's going on?" I almost told her, but fear silenced me. What if they put her on the list? Months later, an email to a burner account. Join the stream or she dies. Link to a crypto payment. I paid anonymously $500. Private video, Sarah alive but chained. Next phase, tomorrow. I didn't sleep. I called a freelance hacker on a forum, too careless for tracking. It's a network in Mexico, possibly, but dangerous. I tried a rescue on my own. I crossed the border, following vague clues to a motel in Juarez. Shadows followed me. A black car in the rearview mirror. I came back broken. Now, 6 months later, Sarah is lost. Official search is closed. I live in constant panic. I moved out of my loft, changed numbers, work remotely. Dreams where I'm in the chair, Sarah watching. The kaleidoscope whispers in my mind. I know they're watching. Every notification is a knife. Nothing concrete has happened, but the waiting is the real horror. I'll be next, or I'll save her, or both. My name is Trevor, and to this day this story still terrifies me. It's not one of those nights where you dream about shadows or whispers in the dark. No, this is worse because it really happened in the real world, with fluorescent lights and bills on the kitchen table. Every time I think about it, I feel a knot in my stomach, as if someone were watching me from the other side of the window, even though I know the curtains are closed. It was 2 years ago, in my apartment in Denver, Colorado, and it changed everything. It turned me into someone who checks the locks 3 times before going to sleep and avoids crowds just in case. If you're listening to this on my channel, welcome, but be warned, this isn't scary fiction, it's my life, a memory that haunts me like a debt I can't pay. It all started on one of those nights that seem harmless, but drag you down without you realizing it. It was a Thursday at the end of summer, the kind of night when the heat of the day sticks to the walls of the apartment and the air conditioner groans as if it's about to give up. I was 28 then, working as a mechanic in a downtown auto shop, fixing transmissions and changing oil for people who barely thanked me. My life was simple. 8-hour shifts, beer with the guys on Fridays at the corner bar, and weekends lounging on the couch with Netflix and a cold pizza. I lived alone in an old 2-story building in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, overlooking the street where neighbors walked their dogs and cars roared by. Nothing special, just a normal guy trying not to drown in the routine. But I'd always had that silly curiosity, the kind that makes you click on links you know you shouldn't. I started with YouTube, videos of what's in a Wish mystery box, those cheap little boxes full of useless Chinese knickknacks that make you laugh because they're so ridiculous. A clock that doesn't tell time, a keychain that breaks the first time you use it. Harmless. Then, on a Reddit forum, someone mentioned the mystery boxes on the deep web. It's not like the ones on eBay, they said. Here there are real surprises, weird gadgets, hacked data, things you don't see on the surface web. It sounded exciting, like a game for adults. I wasn't an expert, but I had played with Tor before, out of curiosity. I downloaded the browser once to watch movie leaks, nothing else. I thought, why not? Just once to see what happens. That night, after a long shift where a customer yelled at me about a radiator that wasn't his fault, I came home sweaty and frustrated. I opened a can of Bud Light, sat down at the kitchen table, that scratch table I inherited from the previous tenant, and turned on Tor. The connection took a while, as usual, with that onion icon spinning slowly. I browsed links I remembered from an old post, a marketplace called Nexus Bazaar, with categories ranging from herbs to pirated software. I skipped the drugs and weapons. That wasn't what I was after. I searched for mystery boxes. There it was, a seller with the handle Shadow Gifts, offering packages for $150 in Bitcoin. Surprise contents, electronics, collectibles, exclusive info, discreet shipping to the US. The reviews were mixed. I got a mini drone, cool, just junk but fun, no red flags. I transferred the BTC from an anonymous wallet I had made that same afternoon. I learned how to do that in a YouTube tutorial and confirmed the purchase. Address, my apartment, fake name but real enough for shipping. Estimated wait, 7 to 10 days. I didn't think about the risks. Or maybe I did, a little. What if it was a scam? Malware on a USB? But curiosity won out. I closed my laptop, took a shower with warm water that smelled like rust, and went to bed. I slept like a log, dreaming of magical packages that would solve my boring life. The first few days were normal. Work, gym at the YMCA around the corner, where I lifted weights until my arms burned to forget the stress. Calls to my sister Lisa in Seattle, telling her silly jokes about my boss. "Trev, when are you going to settle down?" she joked. I laughed. "When I find a mystery box with a girlfriend inside." Nothing unusual. The package arrived on the 8th day, a brown padded envelope with no return address, left in the mailbox in the lobby. I opened it in the kitchen with a silly smile. Inside, a cheap digital watch that flashed random numbers, a flash drive with old memes, and a keychain with a plastic skull. Disappointing, but funny. I threw it in a drawer and went about my day. But that night, while eating instant ramen and watching a Broncos game, my phone vibrated. An email from a generic Gmail account. No reply. .randomoutlook.com. Subject: Did your box arrive okay? I opened it, thinking it was spam. Inside: Hope you like the watch. TikTok, Trevor. More tomorrow. Attached: a photo. My photo. Me, leaving the workshop that afternoon with grease stains on my shirt. My overalls half down, smoking a cigarette in the parking lot. Someone had taken it from across the street, zoomed in. My heart skipped a beat. Coincidence? I Googled my name. Nothing. I closed the email, deleting it twice. Rookie paranoia, I told myself. Someone from the forum trolling. The next day at the shop, everything was normal. A rusty Chevy that needed brakes. The radio spitting out country music I hated. But at noon, during my break, I checked my phone. Another email. Good job on the Chevy. Watch out for traffic on I-25. Attached photo. Me crossing the highway that morning, coffee in hand, oblivious to the camera. I sweated under my t-shirt. Who? How did they know my route? I replied. Who are you? Stop. Response in minutes. A friend. Enjoy the gift. Nothing else. I spent the rest of the day looking over my shoulder. My coworkers noticing, Hey, Trev, everything okay? You look like a ghost. I got home early, drawing the curtains before turning on the lights. That night, a package at the door. A manila envelope, sealed with red wax. Inside, printed photos. One of Lisa and her husband in their garden in Seattle. From her public Facebook, but why? Another of my house, taken from the street with my car parked outside. And a note, beautiful family, take care of them. My pulse was pounding in my temples. I called Lisa. Hey, have you noticed anything weird, strange emails? She laughed. Trev, paranoid, just spam. Come visit us soon. I hung up, but I didn't sleep. I stayed on the couch with the baseball bat from the closet next to me, listening to every creak in the building. The escalation was slow, like a drop eroding stone. Week 2. Daily emails. Photos of me at the gym, sweating on the treadmill, the mirror reflecting my tired face. Good shape, but eat more protein. Subtle threats. If you respond to this, we'll stop. If not, we'll up the ante. I didn't respond. Instead, I changed passwords, deleted old accounts. But the seller of the mystery box, Shadow Gifts, had asked for my real address for shipping. Had I been sold out? I searched deep web forums. Beware of Nexus, scammers who resell data. Too late. Week 3. The packages started arriving regularly, like a loyal subscriber. One with loose bullets, 3 .38s rolling around in the envelope like dice of fate. Note, for when you come home late. Another with a lock of hair, mine. No, Lisa's, judging by the blonde color. Family heirloom. I temporarily moved to my friend Mike's couch in Aurora, a suburb 20 minutes away. What's up, bro? You look haunted. I told him a watered-down version, crazy ex-girlfriend. He laughed, but I checked the windows every hour. From Mike's house, the emails didn't stop. Photos of my now empty apartment, with the door ajar. You left without saying goodbye. I called the police. Cyberstalking, sir. We need physical evidence. I showed them the envelopes. I had saved one with smudged fingerprints. We'll look into it, they said, but their tone was routine, like just another formality. Nothing. That night, a dream, and me opening a package and smoke coming out, but it was just panic. I woke up sweating, my phone vibrating, short video. Me sleeping on Mike's couch, recorded from the hallway. How? Mike swore the door was locked. I moved again to a cheap motel on I-70 paying cash. The motel was a dump. Walls with peeling wallpaper, smelling of stale cigarettes and disinfectant. I slept with a chair against the door, my phone in airplane mode, but the packages kept coming, to my old address. The landlord forwarded them, the idiot. One with blood, a small vial red and thick with a note. Proof that we're serious. I flushed it down the toilet, but the smell lingered. Emails with GPS coordinates, my location at the motel. Room 12. Good night. I ran out at dawn, driving aimlessly through the Rockies, the windshield fogged up by my breath. I returned to Denver a week later, broken. I rented a studio in Lodo under a false name, using my cousin's, paying the deposit in crypto. I traded in my car for a used gray nondescript one. I work remotely now, freelancing in virtual repairs for a car site. But the harassment didn't stop. It mutated. Photos of my new house from a drone, buzzing low. Welcome home, Trevor. Direct threats. Tell the police or Lisa visits the hospital. I called my sister, my voice trembling. Don't go out alone, please. It's complicated. She insisted on coming, but I dissuaded her. Stay there. It's temporary. Months 2 and 3. Terror became routine. Envelopes with cut nails, human. Baby teeth with notes. Lost childhood. Videos of my family. Lisa shopping at a supermarket. My 5-year-old nephew playing in the park. One wrong move, and he plays alone. I became a ghost. Cap pulled low, random routes to the supermarket, avoiding cameras. One day, at Whole Foods, I felt eyes on me. A guy in a gray sweatshirt stared at me at the fruit stand. I ran to my car, driving erratically to an empty parking lot, hyperventilating. Was it him or paranoia? The police came back. Detective Ruiz, a tough woman with tired eyes. We have IPs from Turkey, sir. International network. Difficult to extradite. She showed me a map of shipments. Packages from Ohio, California, even Mexico. It's a network of hired stalkers. Someone paid for you. How much? They didn't know. I begged her. Help me. Keep a low profile. Cameras at home. I installed 3, one at the door, one at the window. Every night, I checked the footage. Shadows, stray cats, nothing. But one clip. A gloved hand sliding an envelope under the door. Bullets again, with my name engraved on one. The climax came in month 4. A large package, cardboard box, in the lobby. I opened it in the car wearing gloves. Inside, a small mannequin, dressed in my work clothes, with a noose around its neck. Note, you're next, tomorrow midnight. I was in a complete panic. I ran to the police station shouting, now! Ruiz put me in protective custody, a safe house in Littleton with an officer outside. That night, in the borrowed bed, I heard noises, footsteps in the hallway, a knock on the door. The officer shouted, back off. Gunshots. No, it was a firecracker, but it sounded like bullets. They arrested a vagrant, but I knew. It was a warning. I spent weeks there, eating cold sandwiches, watching silent TV. The emails continued, but from new VPNs. We always find you. I partially changed my identity. New usernames everywhere, fake accounts. Therapy via Zoom. It's post-traumatic stress, Trevor. Breathe. But the terror was real, a weight on my chest that took my breath away. After 6 months, it stopped. The emails ceased. The packages didn't arrive. Ruiz said, they got tired, or the payer cut off the funds. I moved back to a new apartment in Wheat Ridge with alarms and a guard dog borrowed from Mike. I work from home, contactless deliveries. Lisa came by once, hugging me tightly. Trev, you look like a zombie. I lied to her. I survived. Now, a year later, everything is quiet. But I fear that one day they will return. Those digital eyes do not forget. For now, I only go out when absolutely necessary. The supermarket at dawn. The gym at odd hours. I don't show up on social media or anything. I deleted Facebook, Instagram, everything. I live in the shadows, a walking reminder that curiosity can open doors you can't close. If you hear a knock on your door, check twice. I always do. If you are watching this, it is because you have heard about the dark corners of the internet, the places you should not go. I am going to tell you my story, not to scare you with ghosts or legends, but to warn you about a real, tangible danger that can enter your home through a computer screen. A danger that does not forgive innocence or curiosity. My name is Julian, and what I'm about to tell you is the reason why my life was torn in two. Every detail of that nightmare repeats itself in my head like an endless loop. And even though months have passed, the weight doesn't get any lighter. It's a constant reminder of how one wrong click can unleash a hell you don't see coming. My daughter, Isabella, was the light of my life. She was 17, an age when the world is full of promise and curiosity is an unstoppable force. She was smart, sometimes too much for her own good, with a mind eager to discover what lay beyond the established. She loved art, indie music that I didn't understand, bands like Tame Impala or Phoebe Bridgers that sounded like ethereal whispers in her room. And, like most kids her age, she was glued to her laptop. We lived in a quiet suburb of Portland, Oregon, in a 2-story house with a front yard where we planted tulips every spring. I had been a widower since her mother, Elena, died of cancer when Isa was 10. Since then, we had been a team. Me working as an electrician for a construction company, her at Lincoln High School, dreaming of studying graphic design at the University of Seattle. The evenings were ours, pasta dinners with homemade sauce, 80s movies she pretended to hate but we ended up watching in their entirety. "Dad, why do you always choose things with explosions?" she would complain, laughing, curled up on the sofa with a blanket. I remember the day it all started to go wrong as if it were yesterday. It was a Friday in September, the air still heavy with summer, and the sun was setting early, painting the sky orange over the hills. We had spent the afternoon at the farmer's market downtown, buying fresh apples and artisanal cheese. Isa chattered excitedly about an art project for school, a digital collage about hidden identities in the digital age. "It's like layers, Dad, like onions. There are things you can't see at first glance." I nodded proudly, not realizing the irony it would have later. That night, sitting on the sofa in our house, that worn brown leather sofa that Elena picked out at a thrift store, with a bowl of popcorn between us, watching an episode of The Office, she asked me, "Dad, have you heard of the deep web?" I stared at the TV for a moment before answering, the sound of canned laughter filling the silence. I had heard rumors at work, co-workers talking about sites that sold everything from methamphetamine recipes to stolen identities. "Yes, honey, I've heard of it, and it's a place to stay away from." She rolled her eyes, with that condescending smile of a teenager who thinks adults exaggerate everything. She turned to me, crossing her legs on the sofa, her laptop balanced on her lap. "No, Dad, it's not that big a deal. It's just information. Stuff they don't want you to see. It's like being a hacker, but without doing anything wrong. There are forums about underground art, music that's banned in censored countries. Just curiosity." "Isa, that's not the point," I tried to explain, searching for the right words as I paused the show. I set the bowl down on the coffee table, that wooden table I had sanded down myself years ago. "The point is, there are no rules in those places. People are anonymous and can do whatever they want. And there are things that once you see them, you can't unsee them. They can be dangerous. Not just for you, but for all of us." "You're being paranoid," she said, getting up to go to her room, the laptop under her arm like a shield. "I'm just curious. I'm not going to buy drugs or weapons, don't worry. Good night, Dad." She went upstairs with that light step she always had, and I stood there, feeling a twinge of unease that I dismissed as excessive paternalism. I turned off the TV and washed the dishes, the hot water calming my nerves. I thought of Elena, how she always said Isa was my little explorer. I trusted that my warning had been enough. I believed her intelligence would keep her safe. I didn't monitor her history. I didn't install parental controls. I respected her privacy. It was the biggest mistake of my life, The changes started subtly, like raindrops you don't notice until you're soaked. At first, it was only a week later. Issa came down for breakfast later than usual, her hair tousled and slight dark circles under her eyes. I slept badly, Dad. Silly nightmares. I served her oatmeal with banana, as usual, and asked her about school. Fine, the history teacher is boring. She smiled, but it was forced, as if she were reciting a script. That day, I drove her to school in my Ford truck, the radio tuned to her indie rock station. She chatted about a boy in her class, Ethan, whom she liked because of his Spotify playlist. She seemed normal. But in the evening when I picked her up, I noticed her urgently checking her phone, her fingers flying across the screen. "Everything okay?" I asked on the drive home, traffic on I-5 humming beside us. "Yeah, just an art chat group." I didn't press her. The second week, it became more noticeable. She spent long hours locked in her room after dinner, the door closed with the latch I had installed when she was a child for privacy. I could hear the constant typing, the hum of the laptop fan. One night, around 10 o'clock, I went upstairs with a cup of hot chocolate, her Friday ritual. I knocked softly. "Issa, you want anything?" Silence for a second, then, "I'm busy, Dad. Tomorrow." Her voice sounded tense, as if I had interrupted her from something important. I went back downstairs, but stayed in the hallway, my heart beating a little faster. I heard whispering as if she were talking to herself, or worse, to someone else. Skype? A phone call? I shook my head. Teenagers. The next day, Saturday, I tried to get her out of the house. "Let's go to the Willamette River for a walk, it's sunny." She hesitated at the door, wearing her gray hoodie that reached her knees, phone in hand. "I don't know, Dad. I have homework." But she gave in, and we walked along the trail, the water sparkling under the steel bridge. We talked about everything. Her mother, how Elena painted watercolors of the trees in autumn. Issa laughed when I told her a story from my youth, about stealing apples from the neighbor. But at one point, she stopped, looking at the river. "Dad, do you think people can change their skin? Like, be someone else online?" Her tone was casual, but her eyes avoided mine. "Sure, but why would you want that? You're perfect just the way you are." She forced a smile and changed the subject. That night, I heard her crying in her room, muffled sobs that broke my heart. I went upstairs, but the door was locked. "Issa, are you okay?" "Yes, just a sad movie." By the third week, the irritability came like a storm. On Monday, we argued over dinner. I had made lasagna, her favorite. "I'm not hungry," she snapped, pushing her plate away. "Eat something, at least a salad." "Leave me alone, Dad, I'm not a child." She stormed upstairs, slamming the door behind her. I stood there, fork in hand, feeling the weight of the empty house. The next day at breakfast, she apologized with a quick hug. "Sorry, exam stress." But the circles under her eyes were deep now, like bruises. I noticed her phone vibrating constantly, and she would quickly silence it. Once, I left it charging in the kitchen while I washed dishes, and when I came back, she had it in her hand, the screen off. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just checking emails." I started to get really worried. I called her school counselor, Ms. Ramirez, a kind woman with thick glasses. "Issa seems distracted in class, Julian." She asked questions about online privacy, VPNs. "Is something going on at home?" "Not that I know of," I lied, not wanting to sound paranoid. That night, I tried to talk to her again. "Issa, if there's anything, you can tell me. About friends, boys, whatever." She sat on the stairs, hugging her knees. "It's just, the world is big, Dad. There are parts I don't understand, but I'm fine." She kissed me on the cheek and went upstairs. I slept poorly, dreaming of Elena warning me, "Keep an eye on her, Julian." The change accelerated in the fourth week. Issa stopped going out with her friends. She canceled plans with Mia and Sophie, the twins in the neighborhood with whom she formed an inseparable trio. "I have the flu," she told them by text. But she didn't have a fever. She spent the day in her room, only coming out for quick meals. One afternoon, I walked in without knocking, a mistake that haunts me, and saw her leaning over her laptop, headphones on, typing furiously. The screen showed a black chat window with white text. She jumped, as if she had been electrocuted. "Dad, what are you doing?" She slammed the lid shut. "Just an art forum." Her voice was shaking, and I saw fresh tears in her eyes. "Isa, you look exhausted. What's really going on?" "Nothing, please leave." I left, but my heart was racing. That night, I heard footsteps in the hallway at 2 a.m. I got up, the floor cold under my feet, and saw light under her door. I knocked. Silence. "Isa." "I'm asleep, Dad." Lie. I stood there for half an hour, the wall clock ticking in the stillness. Once, he went into her room to leave her some clean clothes and found her asleep on the keyboard, her head resting on her arm, the laptop still on. On the screen, a Tor browser window was open, with a black background and flashing text. I didn't look to see what it was. God, if I had. I only saw a username as Spider87. I closed the window with a sigh, turned off the screen, and covered her with a blanket. I thought it was exam stress. I left her a note. "Rest, my love. We'll talk tomorrow." Now I curse my naivety. I curse myself for not looking. I curse myself for not ripping that damn computer off the wall and smashing it to pieces with a hammer. The tension grew like a rope about to snap. On Friday, we argued about her phone. "Isa, why don't you go out? Call Mia." "I don't want to. Leave me alone." Her voice was sharp. That night, I heard her talking quietly in her room, as if she were answering someone. "What do you want now? No. Please." I approached, my ear to the door. Silence. The next day, I found an envelope in the mailbox. No return address, just to Isa. I left it on the table. She saw it and turned pale. "Dad, where did this come from?" "I don't know. Are you expecting something?" She opened it, trembling. Inside was a printed photo of her in the park with Mia, smiling, but with a red circle around her face. "It's a meme," she lied, crumpling it up. But I saw the panic in her eyes. I started following her discreetly. I took her to school and waited in the parking lot, watching the kids go in. At noon, I picked her up early with the excuse of a headache. At home, I checked her backpack while she showered. Notebooks with frantic drawings, spiderweb scribbles. Her phone, changed passwords. I tried to guess, but nothing. That night, I confronted her. "Isa, something's wrong. Tell me." She collapsed in the kitchen, her hands shaking. "I can't, Dad. He'll kill me." "Who?" Tears. "Someone online." "Please don't ask." On the night of October 12th, the pressure broke the dam. Isa didn't come down for dinner. The roast chicken grew cold on the table, steam rising like smoke from a bomb. I went up to her room, my heart racing on the creaky stairs. I found her sitting on her bed, hugging her knees to her chest, the light from the night lamp casting long shadows on the walls covered with band posters. She was pale, trembling like a leaf in the autumn wind. "Isa, what's wrong, sweetheart?" I asked, sitting down next to her on the edge of the bed, the mattress sinking under my weight. The scent of her lavender shampoo hit me, a reminder of her innocence. She shook her head, tears silently streaming down her cheeks, leaving salty trails on her skin. "Nothing, Dad. Just a bad dream, that's all." Her voice was a thread, broken. But it wasn't a bad dream. It was a nightmare she was awake from. She made me promise not to get angry, not to judge her, her cold hands clutching mine. Then, between choked sobs that shook her body, she told me everything. She'd been involved in deep web forums, on sites for truth games, and psychological challenges that sounded innocent at first. On one called Weavers of Secrets, she had met a user who called himself Spider. At first, he was kind, understanding. He told her about his own problems. I was also a lost boy, like you, a girl with doubts, and gained her trust with messages that arrived at midnight when she couldn't sleep. They shared secrets, deep secrets. Asa, in her innocence, told him things she had never told anyone. Her insecurities about her body after her breakup with Ethan, her fears of not fitting in at college, details of her life, the code to our alarm, the route she took to school, even a photo of the house from the garden that she uploaded without thinking. Then things changed. Spider began to show a darker side. He sent her a file, a document with photos of her, photos she didn't remember uploading anywhere, photos taken at school, in the park with Sophie, even one from outside her window that same week, with her changing clothes in the dim light, and a message, "Now you're mine. If you stop talking to me, if you block me, I'll come looking for you, and I'll make your whole family suffer, starting with your dad, who trusts you so much." Terror had her paralyzed. She didn't dare tell me, thinking that Spider would know everything, that he was always watching her through her laptop or phone camera. She had been living with that constant fear for weeks, jumping at every notification, deleting half-finished chats, lying to me about her tiredness. She had tried to block him once, but he came back with a new IP address, threatening to send the photos to her school, her friends, me. The anger I felt at that moment was blind, visceral, a fire that rose from my chest to my throat. I wanted to destroy something, the laptop, the wall, the whole world. But above the anger was panic, a cold emptiness that took my breath away. I hugged Issa tightly, her fragile body trembling against mine, and swore, "No one will touch you. I swear on your mother's life." I called the police immediately, the phone shaking in my hand. 2 officers came, a burly man with a mustache and a young woman with a ponytail, at 11 o'clock at night. They took a statement in the kitchen, under the harsh, flickering light. Issa repeated everything, her voice monotone, while I paced like a caged lion. They told me they would investigate the handle, that they would contact cybercrime experts. But they told me, with that frustrating professional calm, that without a real identity, without a fixed IP address, which Issa didn't know how to get since Spider used proxies, there was little they could do immediately. "It's like trying to catch smoke," said the agent, patting her shoulder. "But keep her safe. Change passwords, turn off cameras." They left, and the house felt bigger, more exposed. 3 days passed. 3 nightmarish days that stretched out like rubber. The first day, we kept the curtains closed, the house in darkness. Asa didn't go to school. I called in sick. She slept in my room, curled up under Elena's sheets while I watched the door with a chair under the doorknob. I checked all the doors and windows over and over, the click of the locks a mantra. The feeling of being watched weighed heavily on our shoulders. Every creak in the house, every car passing by on the street was him. I cooked simple meals, chicken soup, toast, but Issa barely ate, pecking like a frightened bird. "Dad, what if he knows I called the police?" she whispered at midnight, the clock striking 2. "He doesn't know. We're safe." Lie. That night, I heard a knock on the back window. I ran with the flashlight, the beam dancing in the dark garden. Nothing, just a stray cat meowing. But the panic remained. On the second day, Officer Lopez called. "We're tracing the handle. It looks like it's from Eastern Europe, but it's jumping servers. Give us time." Time we didn't have. I went out to buy groceries, leaving Isa with the landline and my number dialed. At Fred Meyer's supermarket, I looked over my shoulder. A hooded man at the fruit stand, eyes fixed on me. I ran to the car, my heart in my throat, and flew back, honking the horn at every traffic light. Issa opened the door, pale. "Dad, an email." We read it together. "Nice try with the cops, Moth, but I see everything." Attached, a photo of me at the supermarket taken seconds earlier. I threw up in the bathroom, the world spinning. By the third day, paranoia was consuming us. We installed a cheap camera at the front door, connected to my phone. Issa didn't speak. She just drew in a notebook. Spider webs, eyes in the dark. I tried to distract her with a movie, but she curled up, trembling. "Dad, he told me that if I talked, he'd come for you first." I held her until she fell asleep. That afternoon, the cybercrime agent called. The user used a VPN in Romania. We're coordinating with Interpol, but it's slow. I hung up in frustration, slamming the table. At dusk, I checked the mailbox. Empty. But on the door, an envelope taped shut. Inside, a rag doll with Isa's hair. She recognized it by the bow, with a cut on its neck. Note: practice. Then, the final message arrived. It came at 9 o'clock at night to Isa's personal email account, one she only used for those adventures on the darknet. The ping sound made us jump. You played with fire, little moth, and you got burned. Your father will pay for making you talk. I'll wait for you outside. Let's finish the game. The sender, Spider 87. Isa screamed, a sound that froze my blood. Dad, he's coming. I know it. I hugged her, but my mind was racing. Where's the shotgun? I didn't think about it. I grabbed the shotgun I kept for going to the shooting range on weekends, a Beretta over-under loaded with buckshot cartridges, from the closet in the hallway, the cold metal in my trembling hands. Isa, stay here. Don't open the door to anyone. Turn off the lights and call 911 if anything happens. I cocked the hammer with a click that echoed like thunder. I threw open the door, my heart pounding in my chest, the cold night air hitting my face. The porch was empty, the boards creaking under my boots. The front yard, bathed in the yellowish light of the street lamp, was silent, the shadows of the bushes dancing in the breeze. Nothing, just the night breeze rustling the leaves on the trees. A car passing in the distance on the main avenue. I took a deep breath, adrenaline still pumping through my veins, the barrel of the shotgun heavy in my hands. Was it a cruel joke? A way to terrify us without touching us? I stepped onto the porch, scanning the street. Parked cars, a bicycle fallen on the neighbor's lawn. Sweat stung the back of my neck. I looked back at the door, tempted to go in. That's when I heard it. A scream. A piercing, shrill scream coming from inside the house, from the kitchen. The sound of my daughter, broken, as if her soul were being torn out. I spun on my heels and ran like a madman, the shotgun banging against my leg, the world narrowing into a tunnel. I say. The kitchen stairs creaked under my feet, the hallway stretching on forever. I pushed open the kitchen door, the knob slippery in my sweaty palm. The kitchen door to the back garden, the one I always locked before going to bed, was wide open, swaying gently in the breeze that came in, bringing the smell of damp earth and rotting leaves. And in the center of the linoleum floor, Isabella lay in a dark, growing pool, the blood spreading like ink in water. A hooded man, a black, faceless figure, crouched over her, the long, thin knife in his hand glinting under the fluorescent kitchen light dripping red. It all happened in a fraction of a second. The man jumped up when he saw me, his silhouette outlined against the open door, the black hoodie blending into the night. His eyes, the only thing visible in the shadow of the hood, were two empty points, cold as steel. I raised the shotgun, my finger trembling on the trigger, but he was faster. He lunged toward the open door, knife still in hand, disappearing into the darkness of the garden with a low growl. I fired. The blast filled the house, a boom that shook the windows and shattered the glass of the upstairs window into 1,000 fragments that rained down like rain. The recoil pushed me against the wall, the smoke stinging my eyes. I ran after him, jumping over Isa's body, my heart pounding in my chest. The backyard was a chaos of shadows, tall bushes, the wooden fence at the back. I saw a silhouette jumping the fence, the sound of fabric tearing, and then nothing. I ran to the fence, the shotgun heavy, and fired into the air, the second shell empty in an orange flash. Damn you, come back here. But only the echo and the adjoining forest, tall trees swallowing the night. I staggered back to the kitchen, my legs like jelly. I knelt beside my daughter, the sticky linoleum beneath my knees. Isa, hang in there, sweetheart. Hang on, help is coming. I pressed the wound on her neck with my hands, warm blood soaking my fingers, slipping between them. I called 911, my voice breaking. My daughter. Kill her in the house. Send an ambulance. But it was too late. Isabella's gaze was fixed on the ceiling, glassy, lifeless, her chest still. He had slit her throat with a clean arterial cut, the blood forming a halo around her head. Her eyes open, looked at me accusingly. "Daddy," she murmured once, a red gurgle. Then nothing. The ambulance arrived in minutes that felt like an eternity, sirens wailing in the street. The paramedics pushed me aside, working in vain, the defibrillator buzzing uselessly. The police cordoned off the house, blue lights flashing in the garden, neighbors peeking out in their pajamas. I sat on the porch, the shotgun confiscated, my hands covered in dried blood, staring at the pool spreading beneath the door. The days and weeks that followed are a blur of pain, funeral homes, and police questions that led nowhere. The funeral was held in the chapel of the neighborhood Methodist church under a gray Portland sky. Only close family, my sister Rosa from California crying on my shoulder, Mia and Sophie's parents hugging us with murmurs of, "I'm sorry." The white coffin, closed for the autopsy, with white roses that Issa hated. Too corny, Dad. We buried her dreams with her in Riverview Cemetery, the rain falling like divine tears. The investigation stalled quickly. Detectives came to the house, now an empty shell, checking Isa's laptop. They found deleted chats, but fragments. Spider, manipulating her, asking for photos, details. "Good girl, now tell me about your dad." IPs from servers in Ukraine, chained VPNs. Interpol got involved, but nothing. "He's a digital ghost," said Detective Hayes, a bald man with a loose tie. "These guys jump countries like rabbits." There was no DNA on the knife. Left at the scene, clean, no fingerprints, no witnesses. The woods behind the house led to a public trail. He could have driven away. Neighborhood cameras, a black sedan with no license plates passing by that night. Nothing conclusive. I sold the house a month later, unable to sleep in those rooms. I moved to a small apartment downtown, white, anonymous walls, no garden, no memories. I work less now, freelancing in electrical repairs, avoiding large sites. Nights alone with whiskey and the TV on mute. Dreams where I run through the garden but never catch up to her. Friends call, "How are you, Julie?" I lie, better. But no, guilt eats at me. Why didn't I watch her? Why did I trust? Sometimes, in the middle of the night, I get up and go to her empty room. I still have it in my mind, posters intact. It still smells like her, lavender and crayons. And I sit in her chair and look at the black screen of her computer, stored in a box, and I can't help thinking about that dark, infinite, unpunished network. I think of Spider, that he must be somewhere, maybe in another country, maybe in the same city, looking at another screen, choosing his next moth, chatting with a curious girl, gaining her trust, planning the cut. And the worst thing, the thing that really eats away at me, is the absolute certainty, cold as the steel of that knife, that there will never be justice for this. No trial, no closure, just a file in a database waiting to be forgotten. My daughter had her whole life ahead of her. She was curious, she was brilliant, and she was murdered by a digital ghost, by a monster she herself invited in without knowing it, thinking it was just a game. I beg you, I plead with anyone who is listening, talk to your children. Watch what they do on the internet. Check their history. Install software. Be the paranoid one who saves lives. Because evil doesn't always live in a dark alley. Sometimes it lives just a click away, waiting for curiosity to overcome fear. Don't let it into your home. Not like it did mine. There is no redemption in this story. Don't look for a happy ending or a comforting moral lesson. There is only descent, darkness, and the gradual realization that some agreements cannot be broken simply because you want to get out of them. My name is, or was, Jason Whitmore, 34 years old, former accountant, former husband, former person, I suppose. Let me tell you how I ceased to exist. It all started 8 months ago when my life fell apart in the most modern way possible. Publicly, digitally, forever. The video lasted 42 seconds. Me, drunk at the office party, saying things I didn't remember saying about my boss, about my coworkers, about my wife. Someone recorded it. Someone uploaded it. By Monday morning, it had 3 million views on Twitter. Drunk racist accountant has epic meltdown at corporate party. The headlines were creative. The death threats less so, but equally effective. I lost my job within 72 hours. My wife left me within a week. Local media camped outside my apartment. My face became a meme. People I had never met sent me graphic messages describing how they wanted to see me die. My address was doxed. The police had to be called 3 times when strangers showed up at my door. But the worst part wasn't that. The worst part was the permanence. That video would exist forever. Every search for my name would bring it back. Every job application, every potential relationship, every attempt to rebuild my life would stumble upon those 42 seconds over and over again. My identity had been reduced to one shitty moment captured in 1080p. I tried to get it deleted. God, how I tried. I hired a reputation management company that took $5,000 and accomplished nothing. I filed takedown requests with YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit. They were all rejected. Content in the public interest. Protected under the First Amendment. Does not violate our community policies. The video kept multiplying. Re-uploads, edited clips, compilations of corporate Karens and Kevins. My face plastered on thumbnails with exaggerated expressions. Red arrows pointing, sensationalist headlines in all caps. After 4 months of unemployment, dwindling savings, and every job application met with silence or explicit rejection, we have decided to pursue other candidates. I found myself in a dark place, not just emotionally, literally, the deep web. I had heard about it. Like everyone else, the digital black market where you could buy drugs, fake documents, weapons, worse. I never thought I would visit it. But when you're desperate, when your public existence has become a prison you can't escape, you start considering options that would have seemed unthinkable before. I downloaded Tor. I set up a VPN. I accessed the catalog of deep web links I had found on an obscure Reddit forum. Most of the sites were obvious scams or FBI honeypots. But amid the noise, I found something different. Erase Me Onion. The home page was minimalist to the point of being unsettling. Black background, white text in a simple sans serif font. Tired of your digital existence? Want to disappear? We offer complete verifiable removal of your online presence. No questions asked, no logs. No trace. A single button. Start removal process. I should have walked away. Every survival instinct screamed that this was a scam, a trick, something dangerous. But I was broken, desperate, and most importantly, I had nothing left to lose. I clicked. The next form was more detailed. It asked for my full name, date of birth, all social media accounts, email addresses, phone numbers, any aliases or pseudonyms I had used online. Basically, a complete map of my digital identity. Cost, it said at the bottom of the form. Your participation in our network. Deleting a digital identity requires resources. Those resources are paid for with services. Each completed task erases a fragment of your existence. Complete enough tasks and you disappear entirely. Part of me knew this was evil, that services meant something horrible. But another part, the desperate, self-loathing part, had already made the decision. I filled out the form. I submitted. The response came in 30 seconds. Application accepted. Your first assignment will arrive in 24 hours. Check this site regularly. Using a VPN is mandatory. Never access from your actual location. The instructions will be specific. Follow them exactly. There are no second chances. Fail, and your information will be exposed in ways that will make your viral video look like a joke. My stomach twisted, but it was too late to back out. The first assignment arrived the next morning. Task 1. Digital surveillance target, Rebecca Sandoval, 28, Seattle, WA. Instructions. Access the target's social media accounts. Document all activity for 72 hours. Specifically, who she talks to, where she goes, based on check-ins. Any mention of future plans. Compile a detailed report. Credentials provided. List of usernames and passwords. Compensation, removal of 15 re-uploads of your viral video. Deadline, 72 hours. Note, the target must not be alerted. Absolute discretion. I stared at the screen for several minutes, my mind racing. This was espionage, invasion of privacy, illegal in at least a dozen ways. But 15 re-uploads of the video, 15 fewer copies of that horrible night circulating eternally on the internet. It took me 20 minutes to rationalize it. It was just public information, right? I wasn't physically harming anyone, just observing, like a private investigator. People paid for that kind of service legitimately. The justifications you tell yourself when you cross a line are always the same. That it's minor. That it doesn't really hurt anyone. That your reasons make it necessary. I accessed Rebecca Sandoval's accounts. The passwords worked. For the next 72 hours, I observed the life of a stranger in microscopic detail. Her private messages with her boyfriend. Her complaints about her job at a tech startup. Her private photos. Her insecurities shared with close friends. By the time I compiled the report, 10 pages of detailed activity, schedules, locations, relationships, I felt dirty in a way that alcohol could never wash away, but I sent it. 12 hours later, I received confirmation, 15 YouTube and Vimeo URLs, all now displaying video removed or account suspended. It worked. It really worked. And that's where I should have stopped. Assignment 2 arrived a week later. Target: Marcus Chen, 41, Denver. CO instructions. The target owns a restaurant that is being sold. We need the health inspections to fail. Access the target's email accounts, credentials provided. Send anonymous emails to the county health department alleging violations, rats, improper food storage, sick employees working. Include specific details to make the allegations believable. Attach photos, provided. Compensation: removal of your LinkedIn profile and all associated mentions. Deadline: 48 hours. This was different. This wasn't just observation. This was going to actively ruin someone's business, their livelihood. But my LinkedIn profile was a goldmine for anyone looking for information about me. My entire work history, connections, recommendations, everything. Deleting it would mean a huge step toward invisibility. Marcus Chen. I would never meet him. I would never see the damage he was causing. He was just a name on a screen. I sent the emails. I attached the fake rat photos they had provided me. I used specific details about his kitchen that only someone with access to his email could know. 2 weeks later, I searched his name. Local news articles reported that his restaurant had been temporarily closed after a failed health inspection. Online reviews had turned vicious. People were saying they had gotten sick after eating there, even though the dates didn't match up. The business was destroyed. I had destroyed an innocent man's life with 6 emails and some fake photos. I didn't sleep that night, but the next morning, my LinkedIn profile was gone. Every mention of my professional history evaporated. I was becoming a ghost. And every step toward invisibility required me to drag another person with me into the darkness. The tasks escalated. Task 3. Hack a woman's email account and forward private messages to her employer, leading to her dismissal. Compensation: removal of all entries of my name from local news archives. Task 4. Create fake social media profiles posing as a man and harass her ex-wife with threatening messages until she went to the police, complicating her custody case. Compensation: removal of my public voter registration and associated addresses. Task 5. access a target's bank accounts, credentials provided, and transfer small amounts to charities that would appear suspicious, triggering an IRS investigation. Compensation: removal of all public court records related to me. Each task was worse than the last, each compensation more tempting. And each time I told myself this would be the last, that after this, I would have enough anonymity to start over. But it was never enough. There was always one more piece of my digital identity floating around somewhere, waiting to be discovered by a potential employer or partner or someone from my past. And Erase Me always had another task, another line to cross, another soul to sacrifice for my own freedom. By task 8, I no longer bothered to rationalize. I just read the instructions, executed, collected my compensation. The victims' names were erased from my mind as quickly as their information disappeared from mine. I had become exactly the kind of monster that had destroyed my life. Worse even. At least the people who uploaded my video did so for entertainment, for righteous or feigned outrage. I did it with cold, calculated purpose. I systematically destroyed lives in exchange for my own comfort. Task 12 was when I finally hit rock bottom. Target: Sarah Whitmore, 29, Portland, OR. My sister. The text continued. The target has been publicly sharing information about you. Blog posts, interviews with local media, attempts to humanize you and defend your character. This is counterproductive to your elimination. Instructions: access her accounts, credentials provided. Post compromising content from her profile. We have material prepared. Destroy her credibility so that any future defense of you is dismissed as biased family favoritism from someone who is untrustworthy. Compensation: removal of the last 200 mentions of your name on social media. This will take you below the search threshold on most platforms. Deadline: 24 hours. I stared at the screen for hours. Sarah had been the only person who hadn't abandoned me. When my wife left, when my friends disappeared, when my parents stopped answering my calls, Sarah was the one who brought food to my apartment, who reminded me that I was more than that video, who loved me when I had stopped loving myself. And now they were asking me to betray her, to destroy her reputation, her credibility, her life, just to erase the last traces of mine. I thought about refusing, about simply closing the laptop and accepting that some parts of my past could never be erased. That maybe that was okay. That maybe I deserved to live with the consequences of my actions, both those in the video and those of the last few months. But then I thought about those 200 mentions. 200 conversations where strangers discussed my character, my worth, my right to exist. 200 comment threads saying that people like me didn't deserve second chances, that I should lose my job, my family, my life. And Sarah would be fine. She was stronger than me. She would recover. She would probably understand eventually. Or at least, that's what I told myself. I accessed her accounts. I posted the content they had provided me. Old racist posts that had been fabricated but looked authentic. Private messages manipulated to make her look like a hypocrite. Photos edited to suggest inappropriate behavior. By morning, Sarah was receiving the same treatment I had received. She was trending on local Twitter. Her employer released a statement saying they were investigating. Friends began to distance themselves. She sent me a message, just one. Was it you? I didn't respond. I blocked her number. I added her email to my spam filter. 48 hours later, the last 200 mentions of my name had been deleted. According to Erase Me, I was below the digital visibility threshold. Unless someone was actively searching for me and knew where to look, I effectively did not exist online. I had done it. I had disappeared, and it had only cost me my humanity. Task 13 arrived 2 days later, but this time there was something else in the message. Congratulations on reaching the elimination threshold. Your digital existence has been reduced to negligible levels. One final task, and the process will be complete. Final task: recruitment instructions. Identify a suitable candidate for Erase Me. Someone desperate with a problematic digital presence who would be willing to do anything to disappear. Provide them with access to the site. Your compensation for this task will be complete erasure, zero verifiable digital presence. Note: the candidate you recruit will complete the same tasks as you. One of those tasks will involve you. It is the price of true erasure. To disappear completely, you must allow another to destroy you as you destroyed others. It is the cycle. It is fair. I read the message 3 times, my stomach sinking with each word. I finally understood what Erase Me was. It wasn't a service. It was a chain. A cycle of victimization where every person who wanted to escape their past had to crawl through the destruction of others, only to eventually become the target of the next person in the chain. The person who had given me my first tasks, Rebecca Sandoval, Marcus Chen, all of them, were probably doing exactly the same thing, passing their misery down. And when I recruited someone, that person would eventually target me. They would access my accounts, post things in my name, destroy any future attempts to rebuild my life. It was brilliant in a horrible, nihilistic way, a self-perpetuating system of mutually assured destruction. No one could expose it without exposing themselves. No one could get out without becoming a victim. And every new participant guaranteed that the cycle would continue. It took me a week to find a candidate. It wasn't difficult. The internet is full of desperate people, people who made public mistakes, people who were canceled fairly or unfairly, people who would give anything for a second chance. I found a man named Trevor Mills, 32 years old. He had been falsely accused of sexual harassment at his workplace. The accuser eventually admitted she had lied, but by then the damage was done. His name appeared in hundreds of articles. He could never get another job in his field. I sent him a private message. I told him about a site that could help him. I gave him the link. 3 days later, I received confirmation that Trevor had completed his first task. My compensation came with a final message from Erase Me. Deletion process complete. Your digital identity has been reduced to 0. Congratulations, you are free. Final warning: your recruit, Trevor Mills, now has access to your credentials. Sometime in the next 6 to 12 months, he will receive a task that involves you. You won't know when, you won't know what, but it will come. It's the price of freedom. Live it well while you can. That was 3 months ago. I've tried to build a new life. I moved to a different city. I got an under-the-table job in construction, something that doesn't require background checks or an online presence. Cash payment, no questions asked. I don't have social media. I don't have email. I barely have a legal identity. I'm a ghost. But every day I wait for the other shoe to drop. Every notification on my prepaid phone makes me jump. Every stranger who stares at me too long makes me wonder if Trevor has found me, if the task has already begun. What will he do to me? Will he steal my identity to commit crimes? Will he post things on forums under my name? Will he send death threats from my accounts to public figures? I have all my passwords memorized, but that doesn't matter. Erase Me will give him access. They always find a way. The worst part is knowing that Trevor will eventually recruit someone else. And that person will target me too. And then another, and another. An endless cycle of broken people destroying each other in the name of liberation that never really comes. Because that's what I finally understood. You can't erase who you are. You can erase the record, destroy the evidence, delete the mentions. But the person you were, the things you did, both before Erase Me and during, that lives in you forever. I am still the man who said those things at that party. I am still the man who destroyed a dozen innocent people to save myself. I am still the man who betrayed his own sister. No amount of digital deletion changes that. Sometimes I think about Sarah. I wonder if she recovered, if she rebuilt her life, if she hates me. She probably does. She should. I hate myself. Other times I think about Rebecca, Marcus, all the others. People whose lives I ruined without ever knowing them, without seeing them as whole human beings, only as obstacles on my path to invisibility. And I think about Trevor, poor Trevor, who's probably telling himself the same lies I told myself, that it's just information, that it doesn't really hurt anyone, that his reasons make it necessary, until he gets to task 12 and has to betray someone he loves, until he realizes that the price of disappearing is becoming someone who deserves to disappear. It's late now, 3 in the morning. I can't sleep like most nights. I sit in this cheap apartment staring at my prepaid phone, waiting for the message that will inevitably come. Your account has been compromised. New activity on your behalf. You have been reported to the authorities for... I don't know what form it will take, but I know it's coming. The cycle continues. It must continue. It's the only way the system works. And maybe that's justice, in a twisted way. Maybe I deserve to live with this constant fear, this perpetual paranoia. Maybe this is exactly what the people whose lives I destroyed felt when their worlds collapsed in ways they couldn't predict or prevent. I have disappeared digitally, but in the process, I have condemned myself to appearing again and again in the contracts of strangers, in the tasks of desperate people who will do anything to disappear. I have become the kind of target I myself pursued, a name on a list, a problem to be solved, a soul to be sacrificed for someone else's freedom. And the cruelest irony, I can't report this. I can't go to the authorities, because doing so would mean admitting everything I did. All the crimes I committed, all the people I hurt. They would arrest me before I finish my statement. Erase me has me trapped just as much as I trapped my victims. Maybe more. Because at least they didn't know it was coming. I do. I live every day waiting for the blow, watching the shadows, unable to trust anyone or anything. This is my prison now. Not a cell with bars, but freedom itself. The freedom to not exist digitally. The freedom to live without identity. The freedom to wake up every morning, not knowing if today is the day Trevor completes his task, or if Trevor's recruit has me on his list, or the recruit's recruit. The cycle never ends. And I'm part of it forever. If you're reading this, if you ever consider using a site like EraseMe, let me save you the trip. Don't do it. The price of disappearing isn't just what you lose. It's what you become in the process. And what you become is precisely why you wanted to disappear in the first place. But you probably won't listen to me. I wouldn't have listened. Because when you're desperate enough, when your digital existence has become a life sentence, warnings sound like excuses. The dangers sound like acceptable risks. So you'll do it anyway. You'll find the site. You'll fill out the form. You'll complete the first task, then the second, then the 10th. And when you get to the final task, when you have to recruit someone else, you'll do it. Because by then you'll be so deeply committed that backing out will be impossible. And then you'll sit, like I am now, in a cheap apartment at 3 in the morning, waiting for your turn in the cycle, waiting to become the target, waiting for the price of your freedom to finally be collected. Welcome to EraseMe. Welcome to the hell you chose. There is no way out. There's only waiting, and the knowledge that you deserved every second of it. My phone just vibrated. Message from an unknown number. Updated task. Your target has been reassigned. My heart stops. I open it with trembling hands. New target. Jason Whitmore. My name, my information, my accounts. It has begun, and I allowed it.